I don't know, and I just.
You know where it is.
All right, it is 10 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order and rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We do have a remote presence, so that everybody's aware of that, and we will have some people probably chime in from a remote location. First item on the list is public forum. Does anybody wish to speak at public forum? No one? No one, Ryan? All right, we'll move on to the agenda. We have a couple of changes, David.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, if we could add item E, the minutes from the June 3rd emergency meeting. If we could add to agenda item 2A and B, direction for the county board chair to sign the agreement relating to the canine contract with McDonough Canine. If we could add to number 10, the update of severe weather event and additional information for item number 1 on the regular agenda related to the facility committee.
I'll move, Mr. Chair.
I'll second it.
Okay, we got a motion by Ludwig, second by Lovegren to approve the agenda as amended. Any more discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approve the minutes of the May 17th regular board meeting and summary for publications and the June 3rd emergency meeting. The same thing.
I'll make the motion for that, Mr. Chair.
I'll second.
Motion made by Lovegren, seconded by Moore. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the minutes and reports and correspondence of the Pine County Surveyor monthly report and the Pine County Zoning Board meeting of April 28th.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Ludwig, seconded by Moore. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on to the consent agenda. Had that for a while, so
I'll move the consent agenda.
I'll second.
motion by Lovegren, seconded by Moore to approve the consent agenda. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now move us on to the regular agenda, which first up is the Facilities Committee report.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll take that, Mr. Chair,
Good.
and JJ will fill in if I miss it. So,
Yep.
Yeah, we had our meeting on June 1st. First major thing on the agenda was the Willow River household hazardous waste building, and the bids came in. One bid, and it came in higher than expected. I gotta find it. It's a with our 185 or whatever it is in our bond thing left over, and then the grant we're short $23,287. So we were having a discussion in our committee, and is it, do we, just because that's one bid, do you go out for bid? Can we get an extension on the grant? And we were gonna get some of those questions answered. And I think that was dealt with. I don't know, is Kelly here? Can we get an extension on the bid? So we, or I mean on the grant, I'm sorry.
So it expires June 30th.
Okay. Yeah, so, we, in our discussion with that, we just weren't sure what to do, so we held back to see if we could get an extension and do more bids. But I think we need to bring it in front of the full board. And see what you think, because, you know, we could get a $387,000 building for $23,000 roughly. You know, and that's the cost to the county. The rest of the funds are there. Do you risk not making the grant will go away? You know, and then is the bid going to be higher in the future? We don't know that. Or even if who knows what's going to happen with things. So that's what I'll put out there on that to think about. And I think we need to have a discussion on that. I don't know if you want me to just keep going or have the discussion as we go along.
We could have the discussion right now.
Yeah.
I think here, my first question is, we decided we wanted to have or we needed a building up there if we're going to continue or get our program going. So we can do stuff because we have learned, I think, from whatever we've done with solid waste and with recycling, if it's not convenient, people don't use it. So this building is going to hold household hazardous waste activities, correct?
Right.
That's why we're building it. So without that, we don't have, it's a 40-50 mile trip for somebody to get rid of household hazardous waste. So I don't know if you go beat up the contractor some more and you can save part of that $23,000 overage, but $23,000 and get the program we want, even though we might not like everything's in there. Maybe it's not the worst thing. I don't know. I'm not on the committee, but.
Well, I think you're on the right track. You know, is the benefit to the people and the service we're going to provide, is it worth that? You know, and it's used all the time. The facility is used. So I'm open to any questions from.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, what I got out of it on the facilities committee was it seems to be working the way it is. That yes, the bids were high and there was only one bid, and it's still somebody's money. And I guess things could come down. Yes, I just got indicators that prices are coming down. Takes a while to get to the end user because, like anything, they bought a lot of the material, these suppliers, and it's sitting there now. And when we discussed it, what I recall is we could probably even get by with a temporary solution of maybe even adding another Connex for now to get by. And put it back out for bids.
I have a question on that too.
Yep.
So the grant was until 2023. So does that mean that it has to be finished by June? That it has to be finished by that date? Oh, and operating? So then that's where the time crunch comes. So what would it take to put it back out for bid and see if we got more bids on it?
Newspaper ad, probably. Public, whatever the legal public notification is.
I just don't know how much time we lose.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
So bids, we gotta advertise 3 weeks in the paper, 1 week off. And then you gotta award it at a board meeting, so you're talking quite a while yet, a couple months out probably. We went into the project with construction management. There's concerns with those costs. I'm not sure how much is still left in that budget that Dave had. But you know, the other option is that we general contracted ourselves with my staff. The other concern I had was the grant requires it to be bid. David's view is that we're bidding part of it and it eats up the total amount of the grant. So I don't know if that's true or not. You know, that is a question that I have because I've dealt with grants, and And you have to prove that you have to provide those bids. So that is a concern I have, but I don't know the answer to that question. So there's a couple things, couple scenarios you could approach it as. If you want to rebid it, maybe we do it as us as the general contractor. If we didn't have the grant, we can get quotes. We built the Hinckley shop for under 200,000 ourselves with just subcontractors and quotes and things. Granted, the prices are more now. So, and it's a much more substantial building than the one that Willow River would be. I think there was discussion on the size of the building. Could it be a little smaller? So there were some good questions, good discussion that took place, I think. But the bottom line is it's not quite $400,000 for any normal market, probably $100,000 or $150,000 building. So I think that's some of what the committee struggled with is you do have a grant, but you are still spending quite a bit more than you normally would on a building. And is that okay? It's just the way it is, and you just move forward. And so that, I think that's really the question is.
So my question is, the cost to the county, would it be that much different? That's on, for right now, our cost is 23 grand. So how much is that?
Well, plus 100 and it was what's the
your
bond
mark.
funding?
But that's at your
190.
mark thing.
Yeah. So you got $190, 190,000 of bond funds available. Could you do it for that if we bid it out or rebid it next year? There's some thought that next spring prices might come down with the housing market cooling down, but we don't know, So do you want a building this year? If you want a building this year, you probably move forward with what we've started. By the time we bid it out and ordering supplies, it's 6 months for garage doors. There's all kinds of supplies you can't get. And so you'd have a building that probably wouldn't get finished this year. So I think it's a simple question. You want to pay more than you probably normally would for a building, but it's covered with, the bond and the grant for the most part. So,
Mr. Chair, just,
yeah, go ahead.
I think if we were really good at predicting the future, we wouldn't be here because we would have made a lot of money in other investments. But we don't know what normal is. We pay a lot more money for squad cars, for trucks, for road projects, because that's the environment we're living in, right? And so when I look at it, I think we over the last 3 years got to this point doing exactly what we were expected to do on a program that we want to implement. And so, woulda, shoulda, coulda, we bid the project out by division with the hope that local contractors would submit more bids, because when we built the North Pine Government Center, that was feedback we got. Well, we learned that local contractors did not submit bids, right? There was a very sparse bidding environment. Whether we would go out again and get better bids, I think if you look at the material that was included in the packet this morning, there were some reductions in the plumbing. That's primarily driven by a redesign of the secondary containment to be more specific to what we need. A little bit of reduction in the HVAC, a little bit of reduction in the electrical. I don't know that we would expect, if we rebid it, that those would come down, right? Those are prices that contractors are saying they can do it for. So I think if we want to keep the program moving, we would approve the project. And if we want to come back, there's nothing that I've seen that suggests that the construction market's going to change, substantially in 2 months, 3 months, 5 months, right? Do we come back next spring? Do we come back in 2 years, to see if there's a better market? We lose 2 years of program activity in that time.
The grant is gone too then.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Not knowing, but by just questioning so far, the first price to oversee this was $64,000, just the construction of it. They immediately dropped the price by 50% to 32,000.
Management is for plans, specifications, the bidding, working with the subs. some construction inspection, payments, dealing with issues that come. That's the total, that was the original total for that work. They reduced it to 32,000. Try and reduce it some more. My concern is that's how we started the project, and so I don't have any dealings with the subs, or we certainly can do it as us, as the general. But I think if we want to move forward with building this year, we can move forward with how we originally planned and try to reduce those costs. Yeah, otherwise we come back and rebid general, or we, you know. whole basis.
Go ahead,
Those are
Josh.
your two options if you want a building there this year, next.
But if we wait till next year, we'll lose the grant and because we won't be able to have it running by June.
The one aspect with the grant is it requires prevailing wages, which actually added probably $100,000 to the cost, so. Hard to explain to the public, you get grants and you get federal funds, and then it costs you a lot of money because of those funds, not a dollar per dollar grants, so.
I just got a couple comments. Well, when I was looking at this and when I see the revisions and stuff that are done, I mean, you're at around 5%, a little bit more than 5% of above our budget, which in this day and age is quite well to get that close. Like some of your road projects are, you know, more than that or a lot more. We're seeing a lot of, well, this is, I mean, it is just the way it is, but so I don't think that is terrible at all. Like you said, you lose the grant funds, but is that almost a wash? I don't know. Everybody last year said when I was building the house, this is the stupidest time to build a house in the history of building houses. Well, until you hit this year, now it's even worse. So, you know, is the trend. And it's not like there's an overabundance of a product out there. We're still all running into supply chain issues. So you're not going to see a huge decrease in product. I mean, you guys with your fiber, I heard that's a year out to get fiber to put in. So that doesn't mean it's going to go down in price next spring. I mean, that's just my thoughts, but I don't know.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
So what happens, Kelly, to the grant? Like let's say we approved it today, but we don't get it finished by the timeline because we can't get the product, but we're underway in construction and it's no fault of ours, but we just can't get the supplies.
I think I'm gonna let Caleb answer that.
Well, I've heard.
Yeah, could you go to the mic? Could you go to the microphone,
Yes.
please?
So many of us have heard a lot of anecdote around it, and mine is no wiser, but I guess to think 12 months of delay on materials sounds a little wild to me. And I guess it's a pretty hard deadline of the June 30th. So I guess maybe that would be an important question. But from what I heard from Troy Haug is that if we're going to green light it, do it now, and all those things get ordered right away so that we don't have that issue. Is that how you heard it from him as well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we can guarantee anything, but, you know, I assume if.
The state will work with us.
Caleb indicated that MPCA is very interested in us having this program. So, you know, there's a possibility of getting another grant out there next year too. So that's another option, but I think you guys know the information as far as where we're at. And it's just a matter of, you pull the trigger on it. Maybe you don't like it, but maybe that's just what you got to do, or punt on it. And I think we can build a building next year, and without the grant, it probably isn't going to be much different. So however you want to approach it. So.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
And if Caleb, I mean, if you can assure us that the state will work with us on this, if the deadlines aren't met, I'm a skeptic. I see other things. I've seen one, of course, last week where the state stood firm and would not work with people. So that's another gamble.
So I guess we hadn't raised that. I've never been confused of being too quiet. So we've never, where was I gonna go? We hadn't raised that issue earlier, that what if worst case scenario in our discussion at the facility committee. So I did follow up after that meeting with the rep at MPCA, and we just didn't ask that question. I think it's a good question. So yeah, we can ask that.
Thank you.
I think just my opinion, if you, in good faith, set the process in motion and there's a door that doesn't get hung before June 30th, I think we're on pretty solid ground. If the building is still, they haven't dug the first footing yet, we're probably not on very solid ground.
What's the grant for? How much is that?
It's 185, 178.
Okay.
I guess that's the one concern I have is if we don't go with it, my concern would be we got this, we built the facility up there with the same grant program. And if you decline after those dollars have been allocated to the project, are we as credible next time we would make an ask, you know?
They move you down the list.
Right. And I don't know, maybe other people have more experience in that than I do.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I think that there's a lot of question about if it's not, I mean, you know, we did talk about, there's a huge thing out there to get garage doors. That's one thing, or windows, you know, there's a shortage lately on glass. So could we table this until in 2 weeks? And then can we get the answer on if we can't get the supplies, what would happen? Because if you're saying it has to be up and functional, that to me is saying that it has to be completed.
Sure.
Functioning.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
you said the program has to be operational.
Right.
The program can operate without a garage door.
Yeah. It would look a little bit
Right, right.
goofy, but
But I guess the bids are good for 45 days. So if we table it here, we're getting close to our 45 days. We'd want to actually count, because I think bids were due May 15th. But we could, if there's a sense that except for the uncertainty of materials, we won't know that until we actually are ready to order the materials. And so if we get to that point and find that they're a year and a half out, I think that's when we approach MPCA and say, well, here's our project, here's the ship dates estimated. What do you want us to do?
and we are still on schedule right now. So yeah.
So if we waited a year, possibly we could get it done for the same amount of money without the grant. Possibly it could be twice as much. Possibly. I don't see no real savings anywhere. I mean, we could potentially build it for less, but without the grant funds. So I don't see the reason why we wouldn't just push forward. I mean, it is a 5%, increase, a little bit more, but a year, I can't imagine it would take a year to build a pole shed essentially. I mean, and I know steel is out, whatever. So, but I don't see the point. If we seen a drastic where it could possibly, we could save 50 grand or something like that, but more than likely it's going to cost the same, if not more.
Well, we've hashed her over quite a bit. I think somebody want to make a motion, either we go forward or we stop, and then we'll know where we're at.
I guess I'd go with my same recommendation and the motion I made at the facility meeting to reject all bids and delay the project due to the excessive costs of the current construction environment. I'll stick with decision I made back on the 1st.
Is there a second to that motion? Is there a second to that motion? One more time, is there a second to that motion? That motion will die due to lack of a second.
I'll make a motion to approve it and move forward.
So your committee actually rejected it?
I'll second.
We've got a motion. We've got a motion by Moore, seconded by Ludwig to move forward with the project. Any more discussion?
I have a question.
Yep.
Matt, you voted no at the meeting, so what's your thought change on that?
My thought change is we get a decent building for $23,000.
Okay.
That's my thought process.
Thank you.
It's never gonna be any cheaper for us than that, I don't think.
I think you're right on that, yeah.
I have a little more discussion to that too. Since your guys' meeting, these quotes were revised too, right? This one we got here, this was since they actually voted on it.
Mr. Chair, the revised column is what was presented at the facility committee,
Okay,
although maybe was not as clear as it is here.
okay.
Yeah, and I think there should be a motion to approve the 2 categories of bids. Dave has those. So after you're done, probably another motion to approve that.
Yeah, and the way I heard the motion is it's to approve the bid for concrete and carpentry and to accept the quotes for the other trades and move forward with the building.
The right revised column.
Yep.
Okay. That's what I was.
Yeah, to
clarifying.
accept the bids for carpentry and concrete and approve the quotes for the other trades, which are plumbing, HVAC, and electrical, and to move forward with the project.
So then it does not include the construction management of the site pad?
That's a separate agreement.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion? Any other questions? We'll vote on that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I oppose.
Okay. Then do we need anything else on that? Okay, thank you, folks. Good discussion.
And there's more on that facilities, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
So then we had discussion on the Ben Mill gun range.
Yep.
And that was just I'm sure you all read that, was just a mowing contract and there's like 12 acres that need to be mowed periodically, but not every
not
week.
once a week.
Right, not once a week, because some is okay to be brush and trails and stuff,
Yeah.
but generally speaking, the ranges need to be mowed. And I think Pete looked at some contracts out there and, you know, if you use the lawn service, it was gonna be like $1,000 a time or something like this, some big number. So we thought, well, we'll reach out to Phase, because I know they're still doing that, and we'll see what happens. Pete's gonna research that. Then project updates, Steve Chafee's room we're still waiting on a lock. So we do have a supply chain issue, or the door locking mechanism. So other than that, it was just pretty much, the most of this discussion was on the building.
Yeah, and then snow plowing also.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get back to the snow plowing.
Go ahead, cover that, yeah.
Yeah, just the same thing with trying to see if, what was it, to go yearly on that or 2 yearly, you can't, again,
We're gonna go yearly, I think, right?
yeah.
Instead of 2 years, yeah.
Pete's again.
And the
Pete will
plowing
get the
contracts
quotes.
for the courthouse and stuff.
Is that 12 acres that needs to be mowed? Is it like a field that could be hayed, or is it
No.
rough cut?
Yeah, we kind of explored that same idea, but it's their whole course, there's.
Yeah, it's trails kind of
Oh,
deal,
yeah.
because they have,
And just an update, I know Pete and the sheriff went out and looked at it and they can reduce down what's needed. So there is a mower out there. So if anybody wants to go mow, we'll supply the fuel. So
Okay, thank you.
Is that what they're doing now? Is it says the deputies are mowing it. They're
Yes.
just going out and
Yes.
mowing it. Okay.
Well, thank you to them.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We
Yeah.
still had our
That's why I
SCS
love them
program. We
beyond.
had it
No.
covered.
I got one quick question, Mr. Chair. The courthouse sign, is that this one?
Yeah.
The one out by the road? It's
Yeah.
not doing good. I guess I didn't even pay attention.
Falling apart.
Is it?
When you drive in, just look to the left as you're driving in and you'll see at the base where the bricks are.
Oh, okay.
coming apart.
All right. We done there?
Yes.
Well,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Nathan Nelson, you're up. Thanks a lot for coming, Nathan.
Morning.
Hi, good morning, and thanks for having me come in. And I thought your last discussion you had on the previous thing was going to end up like our session did, kind of unfinished and left a lot hanging. So that's
We get to the end of things.
just I was thinking I was going to be able to have a real quick update and be able to sit down. You know, I did the same thing as you did. Didn't get anything done. So the legislative session, you know, probably most of you have seen that it ended with really only the ag bill, and which had broadband in it, that passed, and then there was also a mental health supplement bill that gives some services really kind of tailored towards mental health, and that was within the HHS bill, but there was getting very little movement on that, and there was a few legislators that kind of took part of that and they split off and kind of quietly crafted a bill and brought it to the floor, and that passed. And really it, you know, we've seen a big need for mental health services, and you know, while I don't have all the details of it, you know, one of the things that is beneficial in our area is you know, one of the just being able to get you know, those that are qualified to do the work, you know, the therapist and everything, that would allow more grants for being able to, you know, help get you know, attract some of these that are in, you know, low income areas. You know, there's with the Medicaid, you know, MA reimbursement rates, you know, they don't repay at a full price, and you know, we've got a lot of, you know, whether it's students or families that are on medical assistance, and so, you know, if they're getting mental health needs, you know, their providers are only getting reimbursed at you know, 60 to 80% of what you know, somebody that's, you know, maybe out of their own insurance plan or paying out of pocket. So it's hard to attract new you know, new mental health professionals to the area because it's, you know, it is a poor area, you know, and we see that in a lot of things, you know, and some of the highlights I see, you know, out of this last session is, you know, we did get the ag bill passed, the, you know, help funding agriculture. And it was one of the big areas there was that it won't help our area a lot, but there will be some of it in Northern Pine County. The what was affected from the drought in 2021. You know, the irony was we were passing a drought bill when it was too wet to be able to get into the fields this spring, and you know, that's just kind of. I stood up and spoke and commented on the floor that you know, don't say that God doesn't answer prayers, because He did. It's just all coming now, and we're getting the rain that we prayed for last summer. But you know, thinking of you know, there are a lot of things that were unfinished, and you know, a lot of work that's there. Some of it I'm okay with not getting finished because it was, you know, spending that I don't think was really going to do our area a whole lot of good. However, one of the biggest areas that we didn't get done was the bonding bill, which is typically the last bill, you know, in the biennium. It's kind of the last thing that wraps up session, and I don't believe Pine County had anything in, or I don't believe the Pine County had anything in there this year. But one thing that was in there that would affect Pine County was Pine Tech and Community College. They had gotten a design 2 years ago. They had gotten a design funds through the bonding bill for an expansion, and so that was within the MinSCU system was going to be funded. And that's if you've toured there, you've seen that there's a continued need for classrooms, and and really it's providing a lot of needs for our area. And it's I think it's a great institution that does a lot of good. And so that's one area that would really have been nice to see, is the bonding bill. And as well as that, they've got a federal there was a federal grant that they received that would go in conjunction with that, which you were talking about the increased cost in construction materials. The federal grant would basically make the construction a wash of what the increased cost from when it was initially bid and projected. So that was kind of really one of the highlights of the bonding bill, would be to finish that and finish the school here. But thinking of areas that are left, our budget year was last year, and we'd come into a special session in the end of June. The budget was fully funded, but and then there's been a surplus, and Commissioner Helen, you will be quick to say there's not a surplus if you've got unfunded or underfunded areas. And so one of the, there's a few areas that I really supported getting things done. And one of them would be there was going to be an increase for probation. And that was, it's left on the table right now. The governor and the speaker, Melissa Hortman, and the majority leader in the Senate, Jeremy Miller, they had a meeting on Friday, and that was unfruitful in coming to an agreement on if there should, what should be wrapped up as if there was a special session. And I assumed they were going to be meeting in person. Well, I read that it was actually a virtual meeting and over Zoom. And I was kind of disappointed at that, because I think it would have been much more fruitful to be in person. And probably one of the best things that I see that ended at the adjournment of the 2022 session was under Rule 10 of our House rules. It ended the ability for the House to meet virtually. And that was a temporary rule put in through in place. We've been through a lot in the last 2 years, and there's been a need to do things virtually. And I see there's people on, joining right now via Zoom, and that's, I think there's a value to that. However, I think meeting in person and face to face is superior to that. And I think that being able to do so is important.
Will that take away the ability to testify remotely?
And so, that's, thank you for that question. And that is the one area that we would like to be able to maintain the ability to is really in committee, because that's where the public can testify, or we can ask for testimony, is in committee to be able to have remote testimony. I mean, there's times where whether it's someone from the county or schools, I mean, they may or may not get a chance to testify, and 2 to 5 minute window where you've got to take all day off for it. Pine County isn't too bad. We're about an hour and a half roughly drive, so 3 hours out of your day, plus the wait time there. I mean, it's going to take up a day for us, but if, when you start looking at Roseau or, some of the other areas of the state, now it's an overnight stay, or maybe even 2, depending on how it is. And so I think that that's something that needs to be, it will need to be addressed in the upcoming legislature, that, how do we do testifying? Because I think that there is a great value in being able to, whether it was for the public to be able to say, I can't take a full day off to be able to give my comments, or, sometimes a bill comes up with little notice, and, for somebody to be able to take off work or travel and, be able to give their comments. So I think that is a great value that I think everybody sees that. But at the same time, our work at the legislature on the floor, voting in the chamber, that's, that rule has expired, so we have to be in person for that. So I think that's good. So with that, if there's any questions, I would try to answer them. Otherwise, thank you, and we'll continue to work together.
Mr. Chair. I have
Yeah, go ahead.
One question.
Yep.
On the mental health dollars, was the catchment dollars we used to receive as a county came in a lump sum. I know you don't know the details, but is it still gonna be roughly the same amount of money that comes to our area, or is it gonna be you apply as needed type thing? How's that gonna work?
I'm not sure. I'll have to follow up on that question on whether it's something that we apply as needed or how that is. So.
Yeah, thanks.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing mental health. I sat in on a Zoom yesterday, and they were talking that the majority of people that start dealing with mental health is 12-year-olds, and we just really need help with that, because I think, you see more and more and more of it, and it's getting to be harder. But I do want to say that listening to the legislative, what happened there, the updates, I get all excited, and they talked about probation, and I'm like, yes, we got it. Crap, no, we didn't.
Yeah.
It was really hard to follow. So if you can do a special legislation to get some of this stuff done, we would really appreciate it. Thank you.
If you can, I would echo what Terry said, because we've been waiting with bated breath, and Nathan, I've beat you up plenty over it. And you can probably say my speech better than I can, but the fact that we had a $9 billion budget and we can't make our counties whole is really unfortunate. And we still have to provide those programs that the state says we need to provide.
Yeah.
So where do we get our money to do that? We only have one real source of income. And so there was nothing done for property tax relief. So it's the reverse of property tax relief. When the state can't pony up what they said they were going to pony up, it makes it real difficult for the counties to continue.
Mr. Chair, I think
Yep.
Becky can make a response to Commissioner
Yep.
Ludwig's question if you want to.
Yes, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Ludwig, you asked about the catchment dollars. Those are still in play for now in our region. And so those are being redirected to the AMIs, to the Regional Adult Mental Health Initiatives. So they're still coming to this area for 2023 and 2024, I believe. And after that, there is some people pressing the legislature to hold AMIs and hold regions harmless and maybe build people up with mental health funding versus taking it away. I don't believe that made any traction by the end of this session, but hopefully next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thanks for coming and sharing with us. We
Mr. Chair?
appreciate you.
Before we,
Yep.
can I just ask
Yep.
a couple of
You
questions?
bet.
The Social Services Information System, SSIS, the HHS modernization. When there's a $9 billion surplus, that is the only time when there can really be substantive change to state mandated processes. Huge disappointment, right? Because that on our end is a significant waste of employee time, social worker time. And so help us understand what we can do to make that point better. Because we thought we made so much progress, especially in the Senate, in Senator Abler's committee, and it just seemed like it fizzled.
Yeah, and I hear your concerns and thank you for that. And while I don't serve on any of the committees, in the HHS committees, but it was, you and I have talked about the traction that's moved in the Senate and in the House. There just wasn't. Let's keep working on that. And I don't know if the makeup. Well, I know that there will be a makeup difference in the legislature this year. There's 57 legislators that are retiring voluntarily. Well, some of them are moving to the Senate or whatever. But regardless, if the balance of power changes, there's going to be a difference in the legislature. And so that always makes a change of things. So, hopefully we can, continue working on this and work together to, change it. Because like you said, that the mandates that are there of what the reporting is takes so much of your time. I'm hearing the same things from school superintendents, what they're having to report and who's having to do the reporting. It's, they're budget killers. And, and it's, while we need and want to have checks and balances, where does that really balance in with getting the needs out, meeting the needs of the community, and making sure that we've got a product that is good and a wise use of our dollars. So,
Mr. Chair, Representative, so Terry Fawcett's going to follow you and talk about probation and give his annual report, but we can't leave that one alone either, because that is one where you started out quoting Commissioner Holland, and we all know that speech. But probation, what counties do are state mandated services. And so we need to figure out how to make a better partnership. Or if those services don't need to be delivered, then the state needs to step up and change the law.
So thank you for that. And, and I've appreciated, working with Terry Fawcett, and I've learned a lot from him. He asked me to be on the probation advisory committee a couple years ago, and I've appreciated that. That's not my expertise, my wheelhouse. You can ask me about agriculture, and I can tell you, and bore you to death with it. But I've appreciated learning and seeing the needs and what is good. And I think one of the areas I think that we need to continue to work for is in a lot of you said that 12-year-olds and mental health. Well, I think a lot of it is we need to get in on the prevention side of it, because that's gonna, preventing bad behavior, preventing, making wise choices when you're young, because that, keeping them out of the court system, out of our correction system, and having them productive members of society is so crucially important. And it's better for them, their children, everything. And I think that's something that we need to be investing our dollars early in life and making sure that, people get a good start. So.
Just to build on that, Mr. Chair, Representative Nelson, locally, we have invested heavily with our ARPA dollars in two University of Minnesota extension programs, one targeted at mental health and one targeted at expanding 4-H, targeting the after school hours with, school age kids. The Evening Reporting Center, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, and with Attorney Frederickson, just really trying to be creative on the criminal justice system with youth to make sure that if they do get into the system, that they have opportunities to get out. And so, from a local government, we think we have done a significant amount of work, and are always looking for the partnership with the state that says you're willing to help reinforce these programs.
So, yeah, thank you. And, I think it's definitely important to have local buy-in, and, and I appreciate what I'm seeing with Pine County and their effort on, trying to get as much prevention of, getting into the correction system, because that's, while it's there for when it's needed, let's hope we can have it as minimal as possible. So.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thank you very
All right,
much.
well, thank you.
Appreciate it. Next, we're going to talk about the performance management program participation.
Me. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Kelly Schroeder, County Auditor Treasurer. I've got an easy one for you. So since 2019, we've participated in this program called the Performance Management or the Local Results and Innovation Performance Management Program through the State Auditor's Office. So they give you this list of data points you can track, and you have to pick at least 10 of them. And it's been kind of fun because you track them year after year after year, the same data points, just to see if you're actually making any progress. And so this is our 4th year. You've got a chart in your packet that shows you where we've been, where we are now. I had said it's been fun tracking it year after year to see if we're making progress. In the public safety category, unfortunately, one of those measures had to change. So we've got our first year reporting data on that topic. Previously, we reported types of crimes. However, the way that those statistics are being tracked, it's no longer able to report that way. So we're now, for public safety, reporting total number of accidents in the county. And so as you look down the list, you can kind of see, you know, we've made some gains in some places, some losses in others. I think that it's helpful just to kind of bring your attention to what we can do something about and what we can't. For example, I look at the level of assessment ratio for property records valuation and assessment. It's a little bit strange to me that that's even a measure, because we have to be between 90 and 105%. It's not an option not to be. If you're not between 90 and 105% of what properties are selling for, the state's going to make you be. Like, they will give you a state order that puts you there. So it's a little funny that that's a method of tracking. And so like PT06, that's your commercial properties. So 2018, we had a ratio of 97% of our values were what they were selling for. So we were valuing about 3% low. Where now in 2021, we're valuing about 3.5% low. Well, are we doing worse? I wouldn't say so. So it's a little, I mean, like, that one's a little unhelpful, but by doing this, we get 14 cents per capita, which equals just over $4,000. So it's a really easy exercise for $4,000. So every year you guys do have to do a resolution, noting that you'd like to continue participating in the program. So that's what you've got before you today.
It's fun to see where you're at. You know, when you look at elections, that was one of the questions that was just asked of the congressman. You know, and here it's showing that we're at 99.93%. I mean, it's nice to see those things. Yeah. Okay.
Is that a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept this, yes.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Lovegren, seconded by Moore. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Probation, Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Appreciate Mark being here today, since Representative Nelson wore a sport coat. I'll start off by saying I appreciate Representative Nelson not only being here, but being at the advisory board, being on that committee. He allowed me to respectfully vent at the last meeting, and that's much appreciated, and hopefully it was respectful. We'll get into some of that as we go through here, but so the first thing is just, I always like to just kind of go over the commissioners. You guys all have the bound copy that has everything in it, and kind of condense that into a PowerPoint every year and give you the high points in this. But our mission, under the direction of the 10th Judicial District and Pine Counties, to develop, provide, and promote effective probation services that contribute to a safer community. I always try to highlight some of the good, I think, that our department has done in the last year. We continue to consult with numerous counties on different things relative to breaking that school to prison pipeline and juvenile justice. Otter Tail, who has now become a national presenter, and some of the work that they're doing, consulted with us here in the past. Stearns County, we're actually sharing ideas with one another over the crossover youth development model with Stearns. Reese and I consulted with Ramsey County relative to restorative justice. And then Roseau County has now reached out, wanting to learn more about the evening reporting center, and I'll be going up to Roseau in July. So I always like to highlight those things, because even in our own department, I think you can get bogged down about is what we're doing, does it really matter? Are we really making a difference? And then when you get a lot of different places reached out to you, I think it's proof that what we're doing, I think, does make a difference. We received an extension on that ERC grant that goes till end of September 2023. and this year received an AMC Individual Excellence Award and presented on the Evening Reporting Center as well at the annual conference. And then one of my senior agents recently presented at the MACPO conference on offender risk assessment. So we got a lot of talented people in my department, which I appreciate because I don't have to worry about a lot of the day-to-day things. Kevin Glass behind me is a heck of a supervisor, and I think he would echo that when you got talented people that work for you, makes your job a heck of a lot easier. New offender entries on probation. So this is just new offenders. So I'll have a total number here in a slide or two, but so in 2021, 415 new ones, but this is based on an annual probation survey that we get from the state. And so here's where you start to get some of the funky math. This is based on their survey, which is a snapshot, but does not include adult or juvenile pretrial, diversion, truancy, restorative justice, or juvenile petty or traffic offenders. So that's another big chunk of offenders we actually supervise and do work for. But the survey is based on cases that are also part of that formula that is supposed to give us funding. So when we talk about why the formula is broken, here would be one example of that. And this is just a corresponding graph that goes with it. This kind of breaks it down. 220 gross misdemeanors this year, new cases, 193 misdemeanor and 37 juvenile. So juvenile numbers continue to trend lower. But again, I think it's more important to say what level of work are you doing with those juveniles versus just the number. And if anybody's ever supervised a juvenile, most of them would tell you that they're a lot more work than some of the adults that are just getting tired. Offenders by case type, DWIs and drugs continue to dominate our office. Again, so now the caveat to this would be this isn't Department of Corrections cases. So Carter Deers, their district supervisor, sits on my committee as well. They haven't run their numbers, so I couldn't tell you exactly where they are, but we handle the pretrial. So if somebody's a pending felony DWI offender, we would supervise it. Once they get sentenced, Carter's office would supervise them. So this is just your misdemeanor and gross misdemeanor DWI offenders, and then your non-felony drug offenders. So total offenders as of December 31st would have been 1,058 with those few exceptions that I mentioned here previously that are being supervised in my department. Okay, sliding on the corrections fees here briefly. Corrections fees were implemented about 2003, and corrections fees, a little bit better shot right here, are important. For us, $47,000 were generated last year in corrections fees. If they don't pay it, it's usually about 6 years that we try to go after and get revenue recapture until you can't collect it anymore. We do get a good amount via revenue recapture as well. And here's some other program fees that we have. We have a pretrial program fee, DWI ISP. So those are your aggravated DWI type cases. UA fees if we're positive, cognitive skills, which is programming. Our lead is our first time DWI offender program. And then our REAM program, REAM fees, electronic alcohol monitoring fees, almost $5,900. So those are important. You know, I think I've shared this before. Lead. We didn't have a very robust training budget when I came to Pine County. We have increased that over the last several years. And I like to say it as the DWI offenders in Pine County pay for my agents to get trained. It's really how it is. That amount right there, $6,400, is really what we have $6,500, I think, in that training budget. So they're paying for agents to be trained. So that doesn't count the cost, you know, the taxpayers a dime. And I think that's important. It was introduced during the session this year, or was talked about corrections fees going away. I think it's important that commissioners know that, because corrections fees, again, it's almost, you know, it's $47,000 to Pine. Some counties such as Wright, that's $500,000. That counties then further would have to be on the hook if you start taking away corrections fees or program fees. Okay, on home placement, I won't dive into this too much because that's a whole separate presentation that I gave earlier, but my department, $198,851. There was over $12,700 collected from parents. I think that's an excellent job done by Becky's staff. Average length of placement this year in my department was 29 days. 25 juveniles for 56 placements, 4 budget busters, so 58% of that spent $116,000. The average length of placement, the lowest since we've collected that data in 1996. That bottom bullet item I think is extremely important. 730 placement days in 2021. 20 years before that, it was 7520, 90% reduction. So when you talk, David talked about, we think that Pine County is trying to do some things different here. There would be a good example of that. Things such as the Even Reporting Center, electronic monitoring, opportunities for kids to correct their behavior, but not lock them up. And that's just a different way to look at it. C5, that's our restorative justice program. I do most of the facilitation of this. We've had 84 referrals total. 69 successful completions. We had 11 that were referred but didn't start for one reason or another, and then just 4 unsuccessful since we started that in 2016. 59 completions, and then 7 youth reoffended 1 year post completion. This is 14 and a half is the average age of kids in this program. There's a better way to lay this out here. It takes kids an average of 90 and a half days to complete this program, 12% recidivism rate after 1 year post completion. That's the important one to me. If that number gets really bad the other way, then Reese either fires me or we quit doing the program, right? That actually came down. It was 13% last year. So 74% male, 37% minority, almost 50% of these kids are person offenders. And then 63% pre-charge, meaning Reese's attorney sends them to me. If they complete the program successfully, they never see the inside of a courtroom or Zoom. And then they never, they don't have anything on their record. So I'm pretty proud of that. And, thankful to Reese's staff to have the faith to do that. And then we have been pretty successful in collecting restitution with this population too, which I think is important. We've had a few kids work it off. Truancy. Truancy is a big deal in Pine County, and the truancy numbers have gone up this year for obvious reasons. Not a lot of them were referred during COVID. Now they're starting to catch up. Our truancy court, I would say, still isn't as good as it used to be because we are in the schools. It's mostly still really Zoom right now. But I would say the uniqueness of the things that we do in truancy court, I think, are far superior to other areas in the state. And I'll give a few examples of that in a minute or now. Why we're different, here's a couple examples. I've recommended several times for payment of a kid's driver's training if they've improved on their grades. And so I didn't say graduate, right? Baby steps. Some of them it might be graduation. Some of them it is, making progress. One young girl that I recently did that for, we discharge her off truancy probation. She's largely raising herself, and the judge knows that. And so this was a good way to say, you know what, you've done a lot of good. You don't need to be on probation. Probation doesn't need to raise you. By the way, let's take care of your driver's ed. So the judge has baked for students upon completion. She's delivered baking goods to their work. I mean, you tell me what other judge in the state that's driving to Dairy Queen, dropping off baking goods to a kid, judge participated in a self-defense class with a girl, was phenomenal. And that restorative approach to truancy not only empowers the youth and families, but it's built on trust and relationship building. We use those incentives and rewards, which is evidence-based. It's not just something that we feel good doing. That's actually, there's evidence and research behind that, that if you reward somebody rather than just tell them how the bad they do, that they actually do better, and try to limit their restrictions. Okay, detention. Oh, one other thing, I had a truant here on May 31st. Well, I have both he and his brother on, and they both have extremely long hair. So I used that opportunity to tell the kid, you know, maybe you want to get your hair cut like me at some point. And he said he would. He said, when I graduate, I want to get my hair cut like you. And I said, all right, I'm holding you to it. Now we'll be in the board minutes. But then I'd come watch and then I would pay for it. So, but again, to me, it's an example of, I would hope is relationship building. This kid was extremely angry when he was put on probation, didn't want to do anything, told the judge he wasn't going to do anything. And now he's starting to be a little bit more workable. Now he's taking medications to help him with sleep. He would have never done that even a matter of 2 months ago. So, you know, sometimes if you can just get a kid in a room and get them to laugh a little bit, maybe they'll trust you enough to work with you.
When does he graduate?
That's going to be a while. Only a good thing,
You better
Commissioner.
write down when that was put in the board minutes so that you know
Yeah.
what to go back to, yeah.
So the detention rate, so we do a risk assessment instrument on at first appearance. So kid goes to the juvenile center, comes and appears for the first time. This instrument is completed by assistant county attorney and probation. And based on that, they make recommendations on whether the kid needs to remain in secure detention or they're released. This is kind of a number. So if a kid got a 0 to 10 on the ray, 16 were released, 9, there was a different alternative. Sometimes that's electronic monitoring, and 5 were detained. You'd ask, okay, if they have a low risk, why are you re-detaining them? I'll give you those examples in a minute. 11 to 14 on it, detained 3 of them, and then 15 plus, detain or from secure detention. So, or detaining them, meaning they're in secure detention. So here's just a different way of looking at it. So 15 plus on the ray, 100% of them this year were detained. 11 through 14, 43% remained in custody. Here's some diversions. I think the first 2 are a little bit redundant here, but it's usually if we keep a kid in who's a low risk, it's usually because they're high needs, or they're a danger to themselves or their family. They might have went after their family, which resulted in being in there. They said, if you release me, I'll go after my family again, or I will harm myself. Usually they might have a low risk score per the tool, but they may still be a danger or a different dynamic like that, or a flight risk. And so we try to keep them in custody. In all override cases, the court ordered that the juvenile could be moved to non-secure detention over at in Lino when a bed becomes available. Problem is, and you've heard me say this before, not enough non-secure beds anywhere. And so that's where the problem is. We know that it's harmful to keep a low-risk kid in a secure detention facility if we can help it. So graduated sanctions. So this is a little bit different. This is based on violations. So we try to make recommendations, again, based on risk and need. And if a kid doesn't need to be, or excuse me, this is adults on this one. If we're making a recommendation to the judge, we track whether or not the judge's order is in line with our recommendations or not. So the outcome here, the court disposition was in accordance with recommendations 97% of the time, almost 98% of the time. Only 2% of the time was a recommendation for lower level of response. And then there's the violation level, moderate and serious, almost 47% on each. This is juvenile, excuse me. And so this is important because we can also, kind of make some, I think, what you don't want to see is if agents are making a certain type recommendation and a judge more often than not is going against your agent's recommendation, what does that say, right? Does it say that the agents got to figure things out more, or do we have a heavy-handed judge, right? We don't have those issues here. Sometimes you can track bias that way, right? If there's any type of bias going on in the court system. So it's one of the reasons we do that. So this is based on 45 violations of probation with juveniles. All right, evening reporting center. I know Commissioner Hallen wants some data here, so we try to dig a little deeper here and get you some. So we've had 37 total referrals up until April. 8 are pending intake right now. 6 currently in the program. Only 1 has been discharged due to behavior and 11 completed. We have a new ERC director starting now. Our last one was phenomenal. Unfortunately, he asked me to use me as a reference for a job with the Department of Education, and I told him yes, and then he got the job. So I shouldn't have done that. Referral source. Most first referrals come from probation. 27% from children's mental health, 3 directly from the schools, and 5 from child welfare. The ones that come from probation are court ordered. This one here, a little bit hard to figure out what this means, but means 4 completed from 10/1/19 to 12/31/20 and 0 recidivated. And then if you didn't complete the program, 6 didn't complete, and out of that 6, 3 recidivated. So you can make an argument that it matters that if you stay in the program, you have a better opportunity to succeed. Some data here. We had 23 students referred to the ERC during COVID, 11 successfully completed, 8 had referrals withdrawn, 3 discharged due to other programming, 1 due to behavior. And the school, YASI's a risk assessment instrument and protective factor data were unavailable for those participants. Really because it was tough to get school data during that time. But now since post-COVID, 10, and out of those 10, 5 have attended regularly and completed initial YASI screenings. 2 have attended less than 4 sessions, still being in process. 1 is on hold per the Guardian, and 2 are pending intake. So these YASI scores, the YASI stands for Youth Assessment and Screening Instrument. Up on the left talks about overall risk, and then their needs, and then do they have strengths? So out of these 5 on top that completed the in-processing since September, 3 of them had low overall risk, 2 medium. We talked about, okay, then what are their needs? Their needs are in the middle. Low, moderate, moderate to high, low to moderate, and then their strengths, very high strength, moderate to high, and so forth. Initial school information, only school info on 3 of those 5. 3 of them, so 1 of them had 13 absences, 1 only had 1 had 11. So the one that had 13 absences then had 7 behavioral referrals and 7 failing classes. So you see how those correlate together. Protective factors. So try to look at where they have social support, physical health, self-esteem, coping skills, sense of purpose, healthy thinking. These are things that when we were developing the Evening Reporting Center, Haley Friedland from Public Health really suggested that we take a look at kids' protective factors. And so when Greg was our director, we really wanted to make sure that Greg kind of drilled down with some of the stuff to see what kids have or are missing here. So for example, the kid on top, you know, social support. Well, he's got a weak social support, physical health, you know, less than moderate, low self-esteem, low coping skills, low sense of purpose, you know, non-healthy thinking. So that's a concern, right? When you look at that kid and say, okay, are we addressing those needs when the kid's in the Evening Reporting Center? And then we're doing it at the midpoint as well. And then, so the midpoint also have school data on there, and then again, protective factor, and then the overall risk. So looking at it from that lens as well. We've heard it here this morning, but I'll say it again. Pine County believes kids can change. You know, Terry Fawcett believes most kids can change, which is why we try to do a lot of things to show that. But good programming is labor intensive. So when you get back to the funding piece, you know, if we have an adult client, we have them in cognitive skills. Cognitive skills programming takes a lot of time. Restorative justice programming takes a lot of time. But there's data in our department that shows that those things matter and it's making a difference. So why wouldn't you do it, right? But I'll get to some other not so glorious data here in a minute, and you'll see why it becomes difficult. Reese, I know you were at my meeting, but I got to use that again. So when we started this process through Project Rise, one of the judges that was our keynote speaker out of Georgetown, Stephen Teskey from Georgia, now retired, said his title of his presentation was, "When did making kids mad become a crime?" Right? And we always keep that in the back of our mind, right? And so if we're too heavy-handed, I'm probably with my own kids, right? You know, when they made dad mad. So, well, he had another quote I found the other day as well, as zero tolerance is zero intelligence. So if you subscribe to the theory that if you just lock every kid up, that things are going to get better, that's probably not the most intelligent way of thinking. It just isn't. I mean, there's so much data out there that shows otherwise, which is why we try to do things above and beyond here. All right. And then lastly, as far as the ERC, we have the vaping program. I'll be honest with you, it hasn't been very successful. The whole goal of the vaping program was to get families involved. Guess what? Families don't show up very often. Okay. So we're kind of spinning our wheels with the vaping program. I have said that this was a recommendation of Andy Almos, but he has quit. So when Andy's officially out the door here in another couple of weeks, we'll quit doing the vaping program. Don't tell anybody. Right?
That's too bad, Terry, because that's something that's really hitting a lot of the schools. Is the
Yeah,
vaping.
Andy's exactly right. It's needed. We just have to figure out how we can engage families more, which is, if I knew that answer, I probably wouldn't have a job, right? I mean, that's with our kids, that's, you know, more than half the battle, you know, it's actually one of the things in the risk assessment, you know, the whole family dynamics, right? So, and then we also have sought assistance, and the board signed on to us working with the Department of Corrections Juvenile Detentions Alternatives Initiative. So they're continuing to work with us to develop more measurements about how we can analyze their data better relative to the ERC. Electronic monitoring, it's a big detention alternative with our kids. Saved $106,000 in out-of-home placement class this year by using that, and it only cost $4,800 to the county. Only over $1.6 million has been saved since 2009. We put 13 kids on a monitor this year for 432 days. Just a different way of looking at it. Okay, Isp program is our repeat DWI offender program. 39 total clients in the program in 2021. 15 new clients and 3 successfully completed this past year. This is a very long program. It's very expensive for clients to be in as well. It's very labor intensive. We have 1.5 agents that supervise this population. But as you will see here, 89% of those who have started this program have not committed a new DWI. And no current ISP clients have been arrested for new DWI. It saved the county almost $180,000 in jail costs based on that white block below. That's how that's calculated. And correctional fees have generated $95,000 in revenue since 2001. Of the clients this last year, 6 had some type of sanction, either formal, informal. 12% had a formal probation violation, and 47% were enrolled in ignition interlock. Pretrial. So this is the one when we talk about justice reinvestment, right? So I won't belabor the point, but when we talk about even that 50%, the 50% is really to get just the state back to what is statutorily supposed to be given to you every year, but hasn't since 1996. Okay, has nothing to do with the justice reinvestment work that's been done for the last year between all three delivery systems and led by the Council on State Governments, which I'll say, and I've said it before, you will never get that amount of involvement and collaboration between the delivery systems and CSG ever again, in my opinion. Which when you talk about, when you have all that money sitting there and nothing happened, very, very difficult as leadership to try to wrap your head around that. Here's why it matters directly to my department. We did 470 bail evaluations just on the ones that we have to do bail evaluations on in the county. That's equivalent to 705 hours or 34% of an agent's time. That doesn't include one field visit. It's a 17% increase over a 10-year average. This includes high risk and pending felony level offenders. So it's dangerous, right? And now if you add the COG work that we do on the people that are on probation and in programming, so you talk about the amount of work it takes for agents to do all that bail studies on rotation and then go do COG work on rotation. I would just ask you, how much time do you think agents really have to be in the field to see their clients? They don't. And this isn't just unique to Pine County. I have the luxury of working with a lot of people down doing security for the Twins that are doing probation supervision in the metro, right? And I talk to them on every shift when you're partnered up, and they talk about their challenges. You know, so if you're working in a prison right now, you don't have enough staff in the prison. So the people that work in the prison are overworked and they're tired, and it's dangerous for them to work there. It's the same thing in community supervision. When we don't put the resources there, the people that are actually doing the job, it's very dangerous for them because there's not enough people in the community supervising the clients that the community would like to believe that you're supervising, right? So that's why the justice reinvestment thing is much more than just 50% funding. It's about blowing apart the three or the models of, you know, how we get to the calculations on who gets what money and about making that decision to make it better because it's not good for anybody, not just our delivery system. All right, promise Representative Nelson, that'll be all I say.
But thank you for saying it.
Yeah. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. And there are some, again, so we did bail evaluations completed but not needed, so 15%. So we did even do some more that we weren't required to do. Not all of them. So we might do all these bail studies and only 40% were actually put on conditional release. And so 43% were not. And out of the PIC counties, Pine, Santee, Chisago, and Kanabec, Pine County has done, and Kevin presented that a month or so ago, a lot more than our partners. Outcomes, I think the only one here I really want to talk about, 39% pretrial violation reports filed. So this is a very volatile caseload, by the way. These people aren't in programming. A lot of them are angry. Some of them are going to be, you know, sentenced as a felon. Some of them might eventually end up in prison. So these people on pretrial, not only does it take a lot of time to do bail evaluations, but once they're on supervision, they take a lot of time and effort because a lot of times they're testing positive for substance abuse and they're not getting sent to jail after that, right? I mean, you know, the argument is relapse is part of recovery. And so it's just more and more agents' time to work with this population. All right, I'm wrapping up here. This is kind of cool. This is pretty new, I think. This kind of gives us a good look on who our pretrial demographic population is. 10 veterans or 7%, 60% problematic chemical use, 49% are unemployed, and 24% in our native population. COG skills, again, COG skills, it's proven, it's evidence-based, it's very labor intensive. Those bottom things there, they're correct. They'll be corrected in the bound copies, but are the ones coming out now. But the first one said a series one should say that should be numbers completed. And then number two should be completion rate. So they had 15 completed this last year for 79%. And then this one, 0% program completion with a new same or similar. So did they get a new same or similar while after they completed the program? Nobody did. 8% completed, but got some type of new offense afterwards, and 32% of those who didn't complete the program got some type of new offense. So again, I think that's a good stat. I would kind of bear out that, you know, if you stay in COG programming, you have a lot better chance of staying on the criminal justice system. Last few slides. LEAD is our first time DWI offender program. We've had 342 adults, 6 kids in the program since late 2015. Sheriff Nelson, Reese Frederickson, Haley Friedland, and Kelly Anderson from Empower are our 4 presenters for that. Appreciate their willingness to do that. This has been pretty good. We had 52 people go through in 2021. Nobody's reoffended. In 20, one person reoffended after 1 year. And in 19, 5 had reoffended after 2 years. So the numbers are pretty good there. And driving with care level 2. So this is our program for usually like a second time DWI offender. A lot of these people might end up being in the ISP program as well, either at the same time or subsequent. We had 43 program referrals and so far, and 38 have completed successfully for 88%. In 2021, 7 referred, 7 completed. This is pretty good. This would suggest to you that if you make it through this program, you may not come back into the court system again or be a pending felon, because the programming that's being done in that program is having some effect. The thing about the Driving with Care program, it's not just about addiction. It's about how does your addiction impact your behavior, right? So you kind of tie it in with your behavior and try to get them to look at things a little bit differently. We track what kind of evidence-based practices progress we've had. This last year, again, I think the big thing was implemented the YASI of the Juvenile Evening Reporting Center students. And then just the last slide, just some cool stuff that the kids have done in this county, as well as in the Evening Reporting Center. The fishing events, both the ice fishing and the summer fishing. Kudos to Kevin. That's 100% his baby. But I can't thank law enforcement, social services, the schools. The list goes on and on of people that have been willing to step up and go hang out with a kid and do some fishing. And then up top right, that's Changing Gates. We try to use them whenever appropriate to bring our kids over there and either have them go through the program and work with the horses, or sometimes just reward them and have them go for a nice trail ride. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions if you have any.
Anybody? Terry?
Answer them.
Huh?
You must answer them all in your prison.
As you keep collecting this data, and let's just take the Evening Reporting Center and those kids age out of that. Is there a way to continue to track those and people into adulthood?
Yeah.
And see if that change that was made at 16 is gonna carry through to 40?
Yes. We're trying to, one of the things I was very adamant about as we put this document together this year was that very thing. And what we set out to track when we wrote the grant. Are we tracking those things, right? Some of the stuff when you're working with the schools, all 4 school districts, by the way, track their data differently. So that makes it difficult for us when we had to go in and start digging through their data. Or definitions of success, right? For some of these truants, we would say if you just said, well, you didn't get your high school diploma or GED, you're not successful. I don't believe in that, right? I can think of two girls right off top of my head right now who never got their degree or high school diploma or GED, who have not become a delinquent. One of them's a mother. The last time I seen her in Chris's food, she looked amazing. This was a meth addicted kid, you know, and so just even trying to make those definitions of what success looks like. But yeah, tracking them. Sherry Johnson, by the way, who did the lion's share of this work and organizing all this data, does a tremendous job. And so she's good about doing exactly what you're looking for, because I think that is important, right? But that's not a difficult find. Yeah.
Thanks. And then the other question, Terry, we know people move on. And so you lost your evening reporting center guy and Andy's moving. And do you think the program has a firm foundation so it will continue no matter who's sitting in those seats?
Yeah, so that's the hope, right? And Andy and myself and Reese and Kevin recently met. And I think one of our last Project Rise meetings, I think it was Reese who recommended that we have a Project Rise get together towards the end of the summer. And that was the reason for it, is we're going to get new faces at the table. All the school districts have new superintendents. Some of them aren't going to have any idea what Project Rise is. Let's get everybody together, kind of give that Project Rise presentation, and then see if we can get some buy-in to the school districts. Yeah, so I think that's extremely important. You know, even the restorative justice cases, with the other part of what I have to do in my job, it's not always easy for me to facilitate those cases. Probably a good thing eventually to get some other people to start facilitating them cases. So it's easier on me, number one, but so there's some type of transition plan for when I retire too, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, so we're definitely cognizant of that. And, you know, I'm just good natured giving Andy a little guff, but
He deserves it.
Andy's one of the best I've ever seen in this business, you know, but Steph Youngberg, who will take over that position, probably good for Steph too, because she's so invested as a principal, not easier on her personal health, right? And so I think by stepping away a little bit and becoming a superintendent, looking at things big picture, that'll be good for Steph. But it's the right person transitioning into that job at East Central. But I cannot thank Andy enough, not only personally, but professionally, what I've seen that guy do and what he has supported, because just second to none. And that's why he's, you know, going to go, he may make more money, but he's probably going to be crawling back here at some point, wondering what he did. But so I just want to, yeah, thank you. I want to thank the board, the board and everybody reaching out to me about my dad. Appreciate your support. So it's always nice to know that I can be away and tend to those things and not have to worry about anything here. I got great bosses. David is second to none, and so is the board and my colleagues behind me and on the computer. So I appreciate you all. So thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you, Terry.
Contract awards.
So we opened bids on, let's see, 3 contracts. I'd like to refer to them as the good, the bad, and the ugly. Contract 2201, it's box culvert projects on 61 up in Willow River and on 25 down southeast of Duxbury. We got 4 really good bids, or really good contractors, I should say. Bids were high. These box culverts are about double what they were last year. But the good news is the low bidder Landwehr Construction. If we take the additional bond funds that we got for the project, we're going to end up with the original amount of local funds that we had planned. So we're recommending moving forward with it. More bad news, you can't get box culverts this year. So there is a backlog. The steel cages are not available that they use to pour around, and other issues that you hear about on the news. So But if we award it, the contractor can order it, get into the schedule, and we'll get them as quick as we can. And so I apologize to Willow River. They've been waiting for 6 years to get this project done. So I'm a little scared to call Vicky Eifler and let her know that. But we recommend moving forward with that. Second contract is our paving contracts for the year. So we've got 3 down southeast of Pine City, 28 and 32 kind of west of Sandstone there, and southwest of Finlayson, and then a 32 out of Vasco. I'm sorry, 35 is southwest of Finlayson. And then we're doing a striping project on 11. We've got about 10 years out of that striping. It's one of our busier roads, and so we wanted to upgrade that striping. We got one bid, which I guess has happened before. We had another bidder that wanted to bid, but they couldn't do the work this year. They just don't have enough workers. Something you're probably going to hear more. Knife River is a good contractor. They got pits in the area, so we're confident that they're giving us a good price. The diesel prices are what's really killing us on this, and that's the trucking cost with the diesel fuel. They're about 18% over, which isn't too bad in this environment, but it's a big number. It's $1.6 million. And so these roads are in terrible condition, and they've been pushed off a few times in the past. So I really can't recommend not going forward with this. We're kind of in a position where we're trying to get through this year. We're going to open our bids for next year and see where we're at, but it's definitely going to impact our 5-year plan. There's no way around it. We're hoping we'll have a better idea next year of, is this the new normal, or is this, did we peak out and it's going to get a little better, and that'll help us with our planning. But we will probably have to advance state funds to do these projects this year. So just so you're aware of that before you approve it. And then finally, the good, we opened bids on County Road 140 Bridge in Hinckley. It's just north of McDonald's. Then we got 2 good bids, and the low bidder, SNR Reinforcing, was about 2% high. So we're definitely recommending awarding that. And just something to note, we do our estimates the year before so we can budget, and we know the prices were going to come in really high, but we don't want to make those adjustments because we want you to have a baseline of information. So, I can estimate, and I could have probably come real close on my estimates, but then you would think that, oh, we got good bids. So I want you to know where we're at, so you understand, this is the environment we're in. And so overall, I think we'll come out of it with those bond funds, advancing state aid. We'll get through this year. And then, like I said, we'll open bids next year, see where we're at. And then we're going to have to probably prioritize 2024 and beyond as far as what's going to get moved back, unfortunately. So any questions on that, on those 3 contracts and the recommendations to move forward on those?
Yep, go ahead, Josh.
A couple of years ago when we did 7 out by Paving Lake there,
Mhm.
how much was that? Because at that time, that bridge, when you had said that was
The bridge over the Snake,
yeah, was that $1 million?
Almost.
probably around $1 million. Yeah.
And now it's a pretty good sized bridge.
Yeah.
right? I mean, I remember you saying that was one of the most expensive ones we did. Now
Yeah.
this little one over Grindstone is
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So,
I mean, concrete and steel and all that is just going
No,
up.
like-
It's probably, but I don't know if they made a mistake or what, but we like the price, and they're a good outfit. They've done some other bridges for us. And
Yep.
so we're fortunate that they needed a job. And just talking with the contractor, Knife River, that bid our paving, we're like, hey, we need you guys, because honestly, there's maybe one other contractor that we can get bids out of, and they don't always bid.
Mhm.
And they said, well, they need us too. So it's a mutual thing. The contractor needs the work. And so, we're fortunate to be in this area. There's other areas that are going to have a hard time. The box culvert situation is a Midwest issue. It's affecting So some of the counties up north that are flooding and need box culverts, the state is looking at trying to get some from Montana. And so it's a real, fortunate we didn't have any flooding this year. So, but it's a real concern and
Denise is gonna argue that one.
I think we'll make it. All the rain is up there. So yeah, it's starting to, we knew something was coming and it's, I've been doing estimates for 27 years. I've never probably had more than 2 projects in that time that were more than 10% over. So, usually we have a pretty good idea where we're coming in and we didn't really even want to guess this year. So, but
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
do you want to do all 3 in one motion or are you separate?
whatever.
We can do it in one. Yeah, we can do them in one map.
Okay, I will move contract number 2201. I'll move contract 2202 and contract 2203.
I'll second those.
So we got a motion by Ludwig, second by Lovegren. Any discussion, questions?
I got one quick question.
Yep.
Like the box culverts, for example, I know earlier when we discussed this, that was the alternative to a bridge, of course, or anything.
Mhm.
What would there be for like any other alternative? I mean, now that there's a box culvert shortage, round culvert.
Well, I mean, yeah, you could do a bridge, which, if we wanted to not award it and go back, redesign a bridge, we're still looking at another year. The drawback of doing a bridge is the long-term maintenance on those.
Right.
You got the surface of the road and everything that goes along with a bridge. And so we try to avoid that. They're more expensive. Maybe they wouldn't be in this case. That's a good question, but I think this project, we opened bids on this, I think in 2017, and then DNR wouldn't give us a permit. And I think the bids were 900,000. And we're gonna end up spending 900,000 or so in local funds with the additional state bond money. So we're fortunate to get those bond dollars. Otherwise, it would have been a real challenge to do the project. But it's a little frustrating that it took us, 5 years to get that permit, but it'll be another year apparently. But yeah, there isn't a lot of good options if we wanna, we're gonna be next year no matter what we do.
Thank you.
So, yep.
Any other questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Move on to local bridge replacement program.
Yeah, and so this is the grant we've discussed. It's a total of $713,269.73. And it is one of the really important things that the legislature does down there for counties and townships. This project probably wouldn't happen without this money. But we need to approve the grant agreement and then you have to pass a resolution. So we're gonna kill a few trees to get the money, but I think it's worth the efforts. So we would entertain a motion or if there's any questions on that.
So we need a motion for grant agreement 1048-612. We've got a motion by Moore, second by Lovegren for the grant agreement. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And then we need a motion for resolution 2022-31.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Lovegren, seconded by Moore for the actual bridge replacement, which is resolution 22-31. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Broadband award. You want to do this, David, or Leslie's gonna do it? All right.
Hi, I'm Leslie Sauter, your Economic Development Coordinator. We have 2 resolutions in front of you guys. One is for the Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus Program. And why it's here today is because we've worked through the environmental review process for the administrative award. And we also, while we were doing our broadband assessment, had them do a quick analysis of this project area to determine whether there was more than one provider that could do the project for us. And Hometown Fiber was able to determine that SEI Broadband is the only provider that can do the project that we were awarded to do. So this resolution is helping us to move forward with the more intense project environmental review. And there really is only one person that can do it, and that's the people doing the work. So being able to execute an agreement with them to move forward with that, and that would be with SEI Broadband. The second one is very similar because we had submitted that grant project in a similar area where they are pretty much the only provider with the infrastructure to build fiber to the premise as well. And that'll allow us to work with them to submit the reconnect application, which is pretty technical. It'll require a lot of communication and working with them, submitting shape files and stuff that we just can't do without their help. So, questions?
This is exciting.
Thank you.
Can we do them both as one?
No, we got two separate resolutions.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to accept resolution 2022-28.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Lovegren, seconded by Moore. Any discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And then we've got 22-29.
I'll make a motion to accept resolution 2022-29.
I'll second that.
And we got another motion for 2022-29. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Scott, start digging. Probably start digging in paperwork, but for those of you who don't know, this is Scott Savage, and he's when you talk to Savage Communication, you talk to Scott, and we appreciate that, Scott. He's been a very willing partner in what we're trying to do with broadband, and we appreciate you lending your expertise. And you sat through a lot of meetings. I know that, and we appreciate that. But
we appreciate the passing resolution too, because it gives us direction where we're going to move with future grant projects, including this Minnesota State deed program that was just announced, and also the county program that was announced. Really helps us, give us clarification where we're moving next in the county. So thank you.
Mr. Chair, I want to thank Scott too. He came and met with us with Congressman Stauber the other day too, to talk about broadband and just your heart. I really appreciate what you do and your heart for the residents here. I mean, it's not just a job for you, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
for those of you who don't know, they have an office in Hinckley, and it's kind of a neat thing, because we were just at a economic development meeting with the joint ventures, the tribe, and Scott actually rents space from them. So kind of a trifecta here. Thanks. We'll move on to the solid waste discussion. I know this was probably some of the most exciting reading that we've had put in front of us for months. Terry said she took a couple naps during it, but there's not a lot of, hopefully you can just explain some of the changes, which there aren't very many from the previous solid waste ordinance we had.
Yeah, I'm Caleb Anderson with the Pine County Planning, Zoning and Solid Waste Office. And I guess going through an ordinance is a little bit of a painful ordeal. So in some ways that was the purpose for establishing the committee, which was done back in October, as shown on this first slide here, to really grind through some of those details and we had coffee and donuts, and we went through with detail. And now we're not at that luxury where we're at the last minute before lunch here. So I have a lot of those details provided on the slides. And part of this is that we received some commissioner feedback that they're just to better understand some of the language in the ordinance that the committee felt good about where we're at with the draft so far. We have an established draft of the solid waste ordinance, but to provide a space where we can kind of look at details, and if the commissioners have concerns and want things looked at more closely by the committee or staff, we can do that. But quickly looking back on the timeline, we established a committee back in October. They held a meeting where we kind of looked coarsely at what are your concerns for solid waste in the different areas included under the ordinance. And then basically, I wonder if it is on the thing, but it's not showing up on the wall. Anyway, the third box for the left, the county staff edited the model solid waste ordinance. So the solid waste administrators from across the state have developed a model ordinance so that collective experience of regulating solid waste, landfills, garbage hauling, storing it on property, we're not all reinventing the wheel. There's a lot of value in having a model ordinance, and that's done in a lot of different areas where counties or cities adopt ordinances. So we tweaked that ordinance and brought out some points of interest for the committee, and they combed through it with a fresh pot of coffee, and we brought it back to them. They gave us good feedback. I shared it with Kelly, who is the supervisor over the solid waste department. We live under her direction, and then also with the county attorney has reviewed it in detail as well now. So some of the directives from the solid waste committee is they found that fugitive trash that comes off of garbage trucks is an issue throughout the county. Solid waste management facilities, they wanted to make sure that when someone wants to open a landfill in Pine County, that we have an ordinance that prepares us for that so that it's done well and not at a detriment to the community. Recycling facilities, it was one of the questions that came up was whether or not recycling facilities should require a license from the county. That was not as clear in the old ordinance. And there was just language that needed revisiting. So the committee felt that the county should be licensing recycling facilities and holding them to some standard. The next one, private property, trash and debris. That's something that is comes up routinely, where my neighbor just started hauling in all these old appliances, these old cars. It looks like a junkyard. Why is this okay? So there was another county that had our same language from 1993 regulating that did not hold up in court. So the intent was that this new ordinance would have new language vetted by attorneys in the 21st century. Trash and debris burning, there's a lot of calls about people burning garbage out on their property, and that's addressed in the ordinance. That was something the committee wanted to see. Solid waste management fee is addressed in the ordinance, but it's fairly silent in that you've adopted a solid waste management fee through resolution, and statute allows you to adjust that solid waste management fee for different programs or services as you see fit through resolution. So the ordinance just kind of acknowledges that. And lastly, recycling. At the statewide level on this model ordinance, there was some language that got a little bit tougher on people to make sure they recycle. Businesses have to recycle, or apartment buildings have to provide recycling for their tenants. And our committee felt we didn't want to go there, that recycling is going to be something more that we continue to foster voluntarily and not through ordinance. So a lot of that language was struck from the ordinance. And then we've got more slides on those. Any questions on that though? Any surprises? This is the feedback that we took from the committee. Okay, so with our current draft, we seek to correct issues deemed not enforceable by a court case involving a neighboring county. So The policies that we're adopting, we want to make sure that they'll hold up in court. So we're implementing our ordinance efficiently. We want to provide improved processes for licenses built on statewide experience. We don't have a landfill in Pine County, so we haven't gone down that road and found out where our 1993 ordinance fell short. So over this breadth of experience across the state, we now have more modern language built upon statewide experience. Reflect modern statutory requirements and authorizations. So there's a lot of state requirements and authorizations that then can be adopted in the ordinance, where either we must do certain things or we may have a solid waste management fee. We don't need to, but we exercise that authorization. And lastly, our old ordinance was 30 years old. So there were things in it that were not being implemented by the county. And then if something comes up, it's kind of, is this what we still want? So we wanted to review it holistically and determine, is this still something we stand behind today? So it was worthwhile to go through the exercise that way. Any questions on that? So here's the ordinance outline. There are 8 different articles. And then I pulled some key components from basically Article 4 through 8. Articles 1 through 3 are basically, how is this going to work? How are we going to do it? But then Articles 4 through 7 are really, okay, how does this affect someone proposing a solid waste facility? How does it affect a garbage hauler? How does it affect a person storing garbage on their property? So that's kind of the meat and potatoes of the ordinance. And if you want me to slow down, you just let me know. But I'm going to be listening for stomachs grumbling. If I hear that, I'll speed up. So waste abatement, storage collection, this is Article 4. So it said the model ordinance said that yard waste and recyclable material shall not be put in the garbage. And there was some debate about that, and we backed off of that. And the committee is recommending that it say previously separated recyclable materials may not be put in the garbage. So a company may not say, yeah, we do recycling, put it out in the curb, and then they take it and it goes in the garbage. So understanding contamination issue come up, but that's different. So it's kind of to hold haulers accountable if they're providing a service. We did keep yard waste intact, where the ordinance does not allow yard waste in the MSW waste stream. And that's that seemed like something that's fairly supportable. It's easy enough to have backyard compost. There's compost facilities throughout the county that landfills are very expensive to develop and maintain, and maybe we don't need to put brush in there. There we go. I'm going to glaze over 1.02E, but it was something that they reviewed and they were okay with. This is one where the county has had some difficulty with this. So this is storage of solid waste on private property. So section 2.02A, the third bullet point. Hang on, we'll go to 2.02. The second bullet point, property owners and managers shall maintain their open areas free of solid waste accumulations. So open areas is just basically the open areas of the property that are visible. And then solid waste is basically defined as garbage. But then it goes on to define different classes of property and say what is okay in each of those. So the third bullet point here is residential sites. No person shall place or store in open areas of any residential site dead and down trees and brush, inoperable motor vehicle, hazardous waste, machinery and vehicle fluids, appliances, fixtures or equipment so damaged, deteriorated, or obsolete, there's no substantial potential to use it, things like that. And we struggled with the language of, do we tease this apart? Do we take out certain sections? So fixtures or equipment, do we take that out? Appliances, trees, brush. And the committee kind of lean to the side of, well, if we keep it in, we have some flexibility for the odd situations where it is, a detriment to that community, where maybe it is a blight issue, a solid waste issue, kind of when when cumulatively all of that material is there. So I discussed this with Reese in my email to him, just just because it says down in trees and brush, certainly if someone has a tree down in the yard, no one calls the solid waste office and say, this is a nightmare. And nor do we show up and go crazy about it, right? So how do you reconcile that? And we reason that it's a fine balance to have a comprehensive list that gives you the tools you need while not saying that, okay, we're going to chase every little piece of that falls under this list. So I think we still kind of fall to it's complaint based, and where it is inconsistent with the intent of the ordinance, we may pursue enforcement or violation. Do you have thoughts on that? Questions?
The only question I have, Mr. Chair. Yep. You're here and you understand what we're approving right now, but
yeah,
5-10 years from now, you're gone, just hypothetically, and they see this. Are they gonna know, well, you have the
discretion
to, when you go out there, somebody else, somebody new, because we have it written in a certain way. Do you have that? I think you did in a way when they respond, you give them a verbal something.
they have the ability to appeal. So if we say that this is,
they just say, hey, I can clean this up in 10 minutes. Is that okay? See you later.
that'd be lovely.
So that should be there too, right?
Sure. Yep. And I think oftentimes the last article is kind of the enforcement process, and we can provide kind of a written warning or a notice of violation. And that kind of says, we find you to be in violation of this. You have, as prescribed, this amount of time to do that. And yeah, if you get it done in 10 minutes, you met it. I mean,
and then I know we had a lot of discussion about farm equipment, and farmers keep stuff for parts,
yeah,
tractors, but that's usually out rural, not close to residential. But it's it might be their house or their farm. So I don't think we want to get to where we say they can't have 6 tractors sitting there for parts.
and I think everyone agrees with that. The solid waste committee wrestled with that, and that's on the next slide. Where agricultural sites, no person shall store, and actually we axed the word machinery from the language for that purpose.
Caleb, go back to the trees and the brush, because we talked about that at the committee meeting. Is this last week was probably a perfect example where people had storm damage and they want to get it cleaned up. The compost site won't take anything bigger than a 4-inch thing. So they dial up their buddy Steve and say, you got room for some firewood? And it, when they first bring it out there, it doesn't look very nice. There's piles helter skelter. And I think we came to the conclusion that, wood yards are not the same as having a bunch of old siding intermixed with some appliances in your front yard.
Right. We also discussed whether it should be just in city limits, where maybe a big brush pile where you probably shouldn't be burning next to your neighbor's house, that maybe that's where you parse that out. But I think we can talk all day about the nuance of it. It's really hard. And I think that's where the committee kind of said, let her ride, it'll be okay. I mean, you're never going to get a perfect definition, but we all understand what is trying to be achieved. And this language should provide that.
Enforcement clause becomes so important.
Yeah. And the appeal procedure, so to your question, in 10 years, if someone else is sitting in my seat, the homeowner has that ability to appeal that notice of violation if they think this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Caleb, so we have, I was on the Hinckley Township, and I was part of the ones that did the zoning for Hinckley Township, and we did a lot of this stuff. We went through all of this and we came up with what was right for our township. So if this gets passed and we've got somebody that is doing something that might have been okay in our township, but it's not okay according to this plan, how does that get handled? So I'm thinking we've got some complaints in a different township. And I think that they have zoning. So how do we override, or how is this going to affect that?
So because this is not a land use ordinance, it's a solid waste ordinance, that, feel free to interject if you don't agree. I suspect that what my observation is that some townships have ordinance tools and resources to implement those, get those properties cleaned up. Some do not. So I would see this as another tool in the toolbox where necessary. If there's a township that says, I guess we just need to keep working with them, and as we already do. And a lot of times we've done some of that with, you know, assessing voluntarily assessing cleanup costs to a property with Kelly's department and things like that. So we're already working with them on that to some degree, and I think we just have to be diligent to continue to do that. And for some of those townships, I think it will be a godsend to have kind of another tool in the toolbox.
If you back up to like 202, and I have, this is just everything that I've come up on the copy that you gave me a few months ago.
Sure.
The one I just got this morning doesn't, I had a hard time lining it up because it looked like things have been changed since.
Yep,
Been
it's a new
working.
draft.
Yep, since I've been working with this one. But right in here on residential sites on 202, you have the building materials of lumber. Why can't somebody have stacked building materials or building materials with lumber? Why is that?
Yeah, I hear you.
Why?
So I've
Is it
seen
the cost of this
examples.
stuff?
So I've seen examples where lumber is a heap of 40 years of lumber along with all the other junk. I've seen examples of that. And I've seen it stacked nice, and I've had lumber at my place for projects because I had some wood milled up, you know? So I think that's where the solid waste, the committee would have had the same question, but they kind of felt it's not going to apply in every situation, but the tool is there where it appears to be in conflict with the ordinance. And I think, would it make sense to delete that lumber? I think that'd be a fair criticism.
Yeah, I guess. I don't
The
know
committee
who
just didn't go there.
I don't know who would want to be the person to judge what's stacked straight and what isn't. And do the 1x4s, they have to go with 1x4s, or? can
I don't
1x4s
think,
be-
when we talked about it at the committee, because I would be the first guy to get ticketed. 'Cause I got a
You and me both, Steve.
I got a sawmill.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to saw lumber and get it all sorted until you get some help. And it's, we left it in there for now at the committee level because we didn't have a better alternative, I guess, so to throw it all out. Because there are some situations where it needs to be, it's part of the mess. It's intermixed with appliances and 3 years of garbage, and you know, maybe that lumber pile, maybe that's not the best word.
Yeah, I would have no, I hear you on that one. And again, this was the canned language that came in the model ordinance where it's built upon statewide experience, and I maybe defer to that as well.
Yeah, and there's not many lumber mills downtown Minneapolis set up that
Right.
I've seen yet. So this, I mean, we gotta be careful. And there's more in here, but my stomach is grumbling when you said that.
Yeah. Keep moving.
Well, we could put for
Mm.
future, you know, not being used in the actual construction of a future construction project on the premises. We could add one word there. You know. Something like that.
How far in the future?
Well,
I have lumber that's kind
then,
of. okay, use that for this
then
or
that gives the discretion to.
Or decayed lumber only is an issue.
Yeah, the lumber is an issue. because some guys stack before they get to it.
Decaying lumber makes really cool furniture though. I mean, there's always something.
But it's usually stacked nice and neat. No one's gonna make a complaint anyway.
Right.
Right. Yeah, and there's 30,000 parcels in Pine County, so I think most people around on an average survey would know the difference between blight and not.
Complaint.
Right, all this new stuff was based off of a committee. That the committee is recommending this. Ultimately, though, we answer to it as a board.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah. We'll move on. Agricultural sites, similar difficulty crafting language. We kind of stuck with the stock language from the model ordinance, except for that we deleted machinery. Just because we've heard that anecdote that Matt brought up a few times. So solid waste storage containers, basically there's some language in there so that solid waste doesn't remain in containers for too long, that it's plastic bags that stuff must not be outdoors. You can't just willy-nilly throw your garbage around your property. It has to be contained. 2.02F, that was the section then for haulers. Haulers may not excessively keep solid waste on the truck. It has to be turned over at a certain rate. If you can imagine, if you were a neighbor to a site like that, odor issue and vermin and all that. Oh, except for the committee did make the amendment that we gave them a little more time for that 2.02F. So 2.03C, basically this is where the fugitive trash that falls off the truck while it's going down the highway. We found language from MnDOT of how they require garbage trucks going on state highways to maintain their loads so that there's not litter produced from garbage trucks. So we inserted some language from there. Yard waste facilities, the committee decided or recommended that we do not regulate yard waste facilities. They do need a permit through the state. So we just acknowledge that state requirement in the language as shown on 3.02B. 3.08C is related to burning and that it is not allowed in areas determined by resolution that regular scheduled pickup of solid waste is reasonably available. So there's a nuance in the law where farmers can still burn some farming solid waste. And I think this language still gives them that latitude unless the county board would pass a resolution at a later date.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I got a question. Now, Caleb, you just said, if you back up one.
Yes, sir.
You got 308C in regards to burning. And then I'm looking at 308D, where it says it shall be illegal to use another person's solid waste storage container, inspect its contents, or remove its contents unless provided prior authorization by the owner or lawful custodian of the container. So myself personally, I'm not too worried about if somebody's burning something, I guess right now. I guess if you didn't see D or skipped over it, on the criminal aspect, if there was a murder or something going that happened bad, and that garbage has to be inspected, maybe this is more a question towards Reese. If we pass this and you missed it right now.
Well, I just didn't put every single line of the 80-page document on the slide set.
Well, right here. And I imagine we got to take action on it at some point. I guess I could see if this was overlooked and in an investigation, maybe you could add, if you went in somebody's something that we had an ordinance that said you can't, would that be thrown out of court and somebody could
So the way
walk on a heinous crime because
Are you talking about the
Whoa.
3.08C right now?
no, he skipped it. He's got.
Can you read it one more time, please?
Yeah.
It's on-
308.
It's on page 22, if you're looking for it.
Yeah. D, unauthorized container use. It shall be illegal to use another person's solid waste storage container, comma, inspect its contents, or remove its contents unless provided prior authorization by the owner or lawful custodian of the container.
Okay, I see where you're going now.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, if we pass this and
Can I
somebody,
say something, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
So I know what he's talking about. generally speaking, let's say I have my dumpster on the end of my driveway, my garbage container,
And I walk out there and I throw the,
bag of garbage in there, and law enforcement knows I'm a suspect in a case. So is this gonna interfere with, because normally in
in the investigative world, once it's in the garbage can and out on the side of the alley or whatever, is
we can take the garbage out of there and go search it without a search warrant.
that what you're talking about? Yeah. Once it's placed by the owner into the garbage can.
And what this is getting at is somebody else can't put their garbage in your container.
That's the way I
That's the
read
way-
this.
that's
You
what
can't
it's designed for.
tamper with someone
And-
else's garbage.
So the,
Taking garbage out is who would ever do that anyway? But some people dumpster dive, I know.
Maybe that's the actual.
It happens on every job, right?
Right.
Yeah, they crawl in them and I know.
But this would never.
I think
stop
that's
law
what, is that what you're
enforcement.
talking about?
Just the fact that if this is in here and somebody goes into the trash and takes something out that's needed to like solve something worse, a crime, it's just gonna screw up a case. Could an attorney get a hold of this and have the whole thing thrown out because somebody
I
skipped
see.
this step?
Yeah, I see.
Because now we are putting it in.
That would be a Reese question, and I mean, we're not gonna pass this today anyway,
Oh,
so.
I got a lot more. So.
No, but I get what you're saying,
Yeah.
but this is, so you have your dumpster sitting at your laundromat or your business. The people coming from their cabins can't drive by in the middle of the night and fill your dumpster up with their garbage. That's
Well,
what
right.
And that happens all the time and people complain.
Well, I take it upon myself as my own personal responsibility. They also just don't help themselves to my other things. If that's the case, I don't need the help. I just worry about this one here. And it was missed. Okay.
I appreciate that comment.
Yeah.
In the interest of time, should we keep going?
Yep.
So that was Article 4. Let's see, Article 5, solid waste management service charges. We already kind of talked about this, that solid waste management fee is acknowledged, but it can be amended, that fee, either the dollar value or the services that it is funding through resolution. And so it's just acknowledging it. Article 6, hauler licensing provisions. There really weren't many changes on this. There's a little bit more language. For example, well, the model ordinance said that they should have a decal issued in each garbage truck issued by the department. We deleted that part. That's section, or the second bullet point there. The bottom bullet point, there's hours of operation. So the garbage trucks aren't running down residential streets at 5 a.m. or 10 p.m. So the committee didn't make any major changes out of that section. They did delete some other things related to reporting and noticing. So I think the model ordinance is trying to get licensed haulers to kind of assist their customers in recycling more. So like section 4.13, it said at least once a year, a hauler shall provide information on recycling to their customers. We took that out to not overly burden garbage service providers. The sizing of the containers in 4.12C, the ordinance is, the model ordinance was trying to make it so people with their garbage service are incentivized to use smaller containers, smaller fees, and then I recycle more. So we amended that language to put a little less burden on the haulers as part of that. And then the third one there related to reporting. Some communities around the state might like very detailed reporting from their haulers, and we've deleted some of that. They still have to have records, and that's a state requirement anyway. But by adopting it locally, we're able to kind of work with the state where if an issue would come up. But we did back off the intensity of reporting requirements.
Yeah, there's a lot of records. That first one.
Yeah. So hopefully that will be helpful. Again, relating to records for haulers, we've backed off some of the language, so it's a county-wide total, not to each geographic region of the county. We've deleted a little more language. We're almost there. Okay, facility requirements and licenses. Am I going okay pace, Chair? I feel like I'm breezing over, but
No, you're doing fine.
okay, good. Facility requirements and licenses. The following types of facilities shall have a solid waste management facility license. So this is one of the things that in the 1993 ordinance, it said we were to be doing this and the county solid waste department was not. And then we had a few issues where, you know, someone started tearing down houses west of town and all of that debris was just kind of going in the yard at home in a residential area to later be transferred. So they were operating as a transfer station, which technically would need a license. So then we're at the point of, well, we haven't been implementing this. Do we pick it now because there's an issue? So we wanted to have a firm our policy. Do we require licenses or not? And the committee is recommending that we move forward with that. And they've recommended that we add to the model ordinance requirements for recycling facilities. So these are facilities as defined there at the bottom, used to aggregate, process, or market recyclable materials. Recycling facility does not include an individual generator of material such as a homeowner or business, and it does not include a manufacturer using recyclable materials as feedstock. So if you're assembling recycling material on your property, you're a recycling facility and would be subject to the license requirements as set forth in the ordinance. So some of those requirements are the county board may require financial assurance. And these are for all licenses, not just recycling facilities. So if someone wants to open a landfill, what's the cost going to be to put this project on the ground? Maybe we require financial assurance so it doesn't fall back on taxpayers through a tax forfeiture or something. Any use of land of solid waste management facilities shall comply with zoning, either of the county zoning ordinance or the applicable municipal, township, or city zoning. So if someone wants to open a transfer station or a landfill, they would need a license from the county, but any township or city requirements would still apply. So it's good to have that mapped out so the question doesn't come up later and people scratch their heads. Accurate daily records shall be maintained. How much material are you actually bringing through your facility? Are you legal with the state requirements? And if there are emergencies, they have to notice the county. So this is a list of some of the requirements. Effective litter control, that's a big one where, you know, garbage can blow around a facility. They need to have emergency first aid equipment, access to an all-weather road for unloading, things like that. Visual screening of the site, different things like this that are also common in like a zoning ordinance. Any questions on that? Specific rules for MSW. So then it gives some specific rules for each of those license types. And this is an example for landfills. So they must have a site plan. They must control the windblown material, no open burning, things like that.
Is it even possible until the East Central Solid Waste Facility is completely full that you would ever get a certificate of need to open a landfill in Pine County?
Is it possible for that to happen?
Yeah. Because don't you need a certificate of need?
Sure. So if there was a need, I don't see why that wouldn't
As long as we have a landfill to use, how would somebody get a certificate of need?
So there's state requirements as well as local. So
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Some of this is, we need to have the language, but it really is about impossible.
Sure. Inspections, violations, and enforcement. There's language providing how the solid waste office is to perform inspections. Solid waste office is authorized to provide warning notice of violation. And we work hard to get compliance through those avenues, warning notice and notice of violation. Just understanding the workload that the attorney's office has for citations. With the zoning ordinance, we have some language similar to this related to like blight. And we've had some decent success just by sending notices of violation. And sometimes you're surprised. The homeowner calls and they say, you know, I'm kind of embarrassed. Yeah, it's gotten away from me a little bit and it does need to be cleaned up. We've had at least 2 cases like that where then they cleaned it up within a couple of months and everybody was happy and we all moved on. So that can happen just through a warning notice or a notice of violation. And that's the goal. And then hearings. So under the ordinance, you guys, the county board serves as the appeals board for the ordinance, whether it be, if there would be a higher profile solid waste facility where we said you're in violation and they appealed that would come to you, or if it was a lower profile is just John Doe's got a lot of stuff on his property and they appeal that would come through you guys. Burden of proof, the solid waste department shall have the burden of proof, providing its position that basically the person is in violation if so identified. So we have to have good documentation and make a case based on the ordinance. That's all, folks. So I think as far as if any other questions, otherwise, I guess the next step would be to schedule a public hearing. So if there's any concerns, we can slow down. Otherwise, we would probably move forward with doing that.
Yes, Mr. Chair? Yeah, I think I got a lot of reasons to slow down. I don't know what the hurry would be for one thing. And then where does all this have to get hauled? Do you have just one site, one place? You have like 5 different companies, 6 different companies, let's say in the county. They have to haul it all to the same place? Is there some freedom of
garbage?
choice? Yeah.
Yeah, we've had that since 1993.
So nothing's gonna change there.
No.
It's no change. Yeah.
They use the transfer station or they haul it directly to the landfill.
Yeah, they can haul from Northern Pine County, can go to Duluth if they want, they can go to Carlton if they want.
I believe you've not adopted delegation where it has to go to East.
Don't have designation, but I believe all the haulers take it to the transfer station in Hinckley from Pine County, unless they're picking up, their route might be right on sometimes their route would take them into Kanabec County and stuff, and they'll just continue on to the landfill. Otherwise, they would, it's just, they go to the most cost-effective place, and the most cost-effective place is in Pine County.
Would something, Mr. Chair, would something like that become more critical to like the construction dumpsters? And you know what they is, and I know, does they go to your landfill now?
Well, the problem we're having with construction dumpsters is we're probably gonna, the landfill itself is probably gonna have to put a stop to taking demo and construction debris. Because if it gets put at a transfer station, it wrecks the buildings and it wrecks the trucks. So it needs to go to a demo land, like the place in Rush City that just takes demo. Or that we got a demo pit in Mora. Of course, that's a problematic for somebody that's into the tear down business, because it's more cost effective for them to haul it and pay more per ton to get rid of it than it is to pay the diesel fuel to get to Rush City or Mora or wherever.
Mr. Chair,
We've got to try to figure that out. Yeah.
just a clarification, when people are saying you in reference to Commissioner Holland, it's an authority that the East Central Solid Waste Commission has, of which your Pine County's representative on that joint powers board. Just in case anybody didn't know that.
I don't have a landfill.
That's
Just
my
happen
bad.
to sit on the,
I just know he sits on that.
on that board. Construction, I mean, especially this last year and a half, because of the massive amounts of construction. It's taken a toll on the equipment. And what they do at the transfer station is they fill up semi-trailers with walking floors in them. And, you know, they were designed to haul bags of garbage, basically. And you start putting 2x4s and trusses with truss clips in them and bricks and all that kind of stuff that comes from a demo. It tears up the trucks. And a new walking floor truck is 150 grand, so.
But this ordinance should be a non-issue,
That's a non-issue.
irrelevant to that.
That's a whole
There's-
separate issue from.
There's a handful of C&D landfills available to any of the haulers.
We did have a company that was going to, they attempted to put a construction debris station in Pine County, but it didn't fly with the locals. So it's a problem. Nobody wants anything next to them.
Right.
But so construction debris has to get put someplace. So JJ, would you suggest that we have another committee meeting and you provide a list of your concerns so the committee could make sure we get it right?
Yeah, I guess, and any other commissioner that has concerns or could just take the time to, I guess, lay them out side by side and then.
Yeah, if you look at the.
Today, some stuff, I've probably just for ease and convenience and time constraints, you left out things.
Yeah, we had to.
Well, you had to, right, but some were left out that actually that I spotted months ago that should be questioned. And just to take our time.
Well, we have taken a year, so, but the thing you were mailed out is the draft. So if you can mark that up and then the committee can take another look at that.
And if I may have some discretion, if many of these may be legal questions and not committee questions.
Right.
So can we kind of look at that to see if
Yeah.
that makes more sense to review it with Reese?
Yeah.
Well, I would accept an invite to your committee. When your committee meets, your ad hoc committee, you said?
Yeah.
It's an appointed committee.
But I guess my point is if your concerns are policy related, whereas just is this directionally makes sense, those are good committee discussions. If they're legal questions, then I would maybe err to not reassemble the committee and rather get Reese's assistance.
I was under the assumption that you had already run it by the county attorney when
We have. So I don't know.
what his findings are.
Well, I think they were included in the mock or the draft that we got.
Right.
I mean, any changes that he suggested were already in there. But if you have questions, I think we need to know what they are. We either take time today
Just
or.
got the new one today, so I will be looking at it.
Okay, is that?
Got the old one a few months ago.
Nothing, I don't think anything would have been added, but only removed, if in case that's helpful to you.
Yeah.
We'll bring it back to the table and however long it takes you to mock up, write up your concerns.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
I hate to say this, I actually have an opportunity to get 40 brand new AEDs from today, and I have to be in Brainerd by 2 o'clock.
And I assured her that we would not go that long, that she could
Yeah.
not make her appointment in Brainerd.
Well, why don't you jump right up and talk?
Are you okay with that? I'm sorry.
This is the storm update 10 added to the agenda.
Yes, sorry about that. I was gonna say good morning, but good afternoon, everybody. We have a couple of items here that we've added since our emergency meeting last Friday. Just to recap for some that weren't here. On the 30th Memorial Day, we had a storm hit Pine County. As of 2:38 on that afternoon, we actually were in a tornado watch. Severe thunderstorm warning had been on all day since early that day. At about 7:30, the storm entered our county and unfortunately hit all the way from Pine City to Bruno with damage. At one time, over 15,000 people were without power. Some were without power for about 3 days. During that time, we had 56 calls for power lines down into the dispatch center. That's not including other multiple calls that we had causing fires from those down lines or people having accidents, medicals, our usual caseload. Multiple others like I said, multiple other calls. Immediately after the storm, this is where Mark steps in. Our county highway was out along with fire and our medical.
Yeah, so our two supervisors, Terry Clemenson and Pine City, he lost a couple of trees in his yard and his power was out and my power was out and my neighbor's docks and pontoons were all over the place. So we knew there'd be trees down. So Terry went out. Then he got some calls from dispatch. Chris Matris, our supervisor in Sandstone, got called fairly quickly about Highway 61 north of Hinckley being blocked with trees. So they were able to get the crews out. We had 10 highway maintenance workers with 2 front end loaders, 2 motor graders, chainsaws, and they were out by about 8:30. So, within probably an hour, 45 minutes of the storm. So really appreciate their efforts to get out. Main goal was clearing the lanes so emergency vehicles could get through, the power companies, and try to prevent any accidents. They were out until 4 a.m. and then came back in for their regular shift at 7, so nobody called in sick. So really just kind of goes to show the commitment that my staff made. By Tuesday, towards the end of the day, I think all the roads were open except for a couple. There were some power lines on a couple of roads yet. And so we had everything open by Wednesday, and the rest of the week we've kind of gone back and tried to get the brush pushed back. Yesterday we got a logger start on the ditches on 61 north of Hinckley. That was probably the most condensed severe area. And that's going to take a few days, which would have took us probably a month. So we appreciate Brad Rookie helping us out. And then we will be going back this summer as our schedule fits us in and dealing with complaints. Had a complaint this morning. I think we took care of that one. So from a very important person. So we got that one taken care of. But we expect there's maybe people that are coming up to their property and they'll say, hey, can someone get this tree out of our ditch? Or, what do we do? And we'll just kind of deal with those as we go through the summer. So if you get complaints or hear of anything, let us know or have them call us so we can get out and take care of that. We're looking at probably about $20,000 that we can expense out to the state if we get funding, possibly. And just want to say the sheriff's department and dispatch did an excellent job of getting us where we needed to be. There was good communication. The fire departments, our power was out for only 12 hours and I thought it's going to be a couple of days. So I know the power companies really did a nice job. And so it was a little bit different than most of the things we've had are floods, and it kind of comes up and you got to wait. And then you're just, what are we going to have when this water goes away? This is a little bit, this just boom, it's in and we can get out and we can work. And I think, we didn't have any unusual difficulties other than the power lines were in such situations where we just couldn't do anything until that got taken care of. So we were dependent on power companies to get their stuff done first before we could get in there. And so thankfully we didn't have any injuries. And I don't know if there was any residents injured as well. So pretty, pretty amazing. So any questions on our response?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Definitely amazing that nobody was injured. So along with that, we know that we've been through a few declarations, disasters in our county. And with that, the property damage assessment or preliminary damage assessment comes in. So we know we work hand in hand with the assessor on getting out and getting all of the properties not spoken for, but tallied, basically what's been damaged and whatnot, and with public infrastructure. So with public infrastructure, the very second day of this, I actually was noticed by Great River Energy that they had snapped 9 poles. With those 9 poles, it was over our county threshold at like 135,000. That's not including anybody else that I've talked to. So they automatically put us over the threshold for participating in the declaration. So hand in hand, we've been working on getting everybody tallied up for the county. And Lori can talk more about that, along with our drone footage that helped out a little bit, getting all of those addresses in there. So. Is this I didn't bring my boot.
Hi. So to date, we have approximately 72 affected parcels. To try and break that down, there are 10 commercial and or apartment parcels, 9 seasonal, 1 exempt property, and the balance would be residential or seasonal properties. I am working closely with Denise, and as we find out about another parcel that may be affected by the damage, we are working closely and sharing that. As you know, the storm happened on Monday, Memorial Day. So by that Thursday, I had staff out reassessing the damage of the parcels that we knew were affected. They were out on Friday, and as we speak, I have them out right now. We will continue to go out until we have them all picked up. Once we get that done, then I need to sit down and take a look at what is the damage, because for our office, the assessor's office, we're concerned with the primary structure. So that's going to be your home or your cabin. And then it's a matter of calculating out what that percentage would be and how that's going to affect a possible abatement if they've been displaced, things like that. So it's really early right now because we're still in the we're still gathering the information. Did you have any questions for me?
I do, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
So how is it working? I know a lot of people are still waiting for the insurance adjusters to come out, and they're being told, don't do anything until we get there. How is that affecting you?
Yeah, so for us, that's why we're hurrying to get out now, because we need to see what their damage is, but we will then go out at the end of the year, because our assessment date for your value is January 2nd. So we have to go back at the end of the year and take a look again to see, did they replace it? Is it better now? Did they just remove it, not replace it? So we want to make sure the value is shown correctly at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Is it possible to put that in that? That'd be great. Okay, so just to wrap up, working with everybody, we did send the drone up a number more times that we have more footage to send to the National Weather Service. I haven't got to use this yet. How does the pointer work on here? Doesn't it? Okay, well, that's fine. That's fine. So basically at the bottom of the screen, it is that little point that you see. It is Hardee's. And then working its way north. It started as an EF0, which that means it was around under 85 miles an hour. However, it picked up steam rather quickly, moved to an EF1, which is around 95 miles an hour. The length of the tornado went about 3.3 miles. But now with the new footage that we're getting from the drone, we figured that there is a lot of path actually past Barun and south. So we'll send that back into the National Weather Service. And I have a feeling that we might have more than one touchdown. So it's quite possible. At first, what we thought were that these were straight line winds that came in. And
we were wrong. So with that, basically, I think the takeaways from this to work a little bit maybe better for the public is that Lori and I were talking a little bit about possibly having a website where people could input their information on. That way it's kind of on them and we might get it quicker between the two of us, not sure.
We have to keep in mind though too, because so many of the people may be elderly or not have access to the internet, so then maybe take it a step further.
Yep. Just more and more resources for our public. The other thing that we did talk about that we put out for Red Cross and Salvation Army, and we had a few at first that were talking about that for part of the place that was hit. If you want to play, actually, if you just want to play 15 instead of 5, that'd be great. And you'll see here, this is actually up 61 by Keith Kostanek. He's doing okay. I know that they brought a camper in to be in for a while. But right north of here, we have a mobile home park, which you'll see in a little bit, and it'll circle around to that. So this is our drone footage with, I believe, the drone that we got from France and Bank. Keith did lose part of his roof and it had folded over on his fence. As you move forward, that is his home right there. So there's so many homes affected. It's a miracle that nobody, like I said, was injured in this. I have pictures of the funnel cloud coming down towards, it was by over the casino, like that way. And with that, you could still see people flying by on the freeway in the middle of all this, not even knowing what's happening. So that's the mobile home park just north of his place. And we had, I believe, over 4 residences occupied there. And I know the fire departments and a couple of community members got their chainsaws out and were in there. It is unfortunate we did have a medical at that address later on the next day.
So all of those trailers right there that are all covered with trees, those were all empty, weren't they?
No.
Oh, they were not
No.
empty. Okay.
The one that has, I think, a few trees on it actually had a person there.
Okay.
And that person, I believe, went to be with family.
Okay.
So I did, like I said, speak to the Red Cross and Salvation Army, and we're waiting to help residents if they needed it. So we didn't open any shelters. And I know water was delivered, I believe, by Daggett's that day for those residents there, along with help from other community members. So that's all I have. Is there anything?
Thank you, Denise, and go get the AEDs.
Yay. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's a great opportunity. Yeah, right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know you worked really hard through this. Thank you for all that too.
Okay, Arrowhead counties. Anybody get there?
Oh.
Tribal Economy Summit. I got there. It was actually a very awesome day. They had some great speakers and what the Ventures is doing and plans to do. And I think we can be proud that we're partners with them on some of those events they're doing. So it was a good deal. They're planning on, that was the first annual, so they're planning on doing it again. Snake River Watershed.
It was ugly.
Ugly.
I just want to say that after being on that board and dealing with some of the county commissioners in other counties, I really appreciate everybody in this room a lot. So thanks, Josh. So there still is a lot of controversy about who should be invited. Now that they're changing the name and they're reorganizing everything, they need to invite, according to Bowser, we need to invite Chisago Isanti and the Mille Lacs Band to be a part of it. And that's caused a lot of controversy because they have not paid into it from the very beginning, and we have. And so it's gonna be, we finally got to an agreement, and then Bowser said, oh, wait, we might need to relook at this. I think that we just got a text on Friday and it needs to be redone after a pretty big argument. So that's going to be relooked at. They were going to have the attorneys. Reese, did you ever hear from them?
Not heard from them yet.
Okay, they were gonna get together with all the attorneys, and Bowser wanted to meet with them because this is such an old watershed. It's one of the first original ones that they want to make sure that they understand the differences between that and the newer ones. So that's supposed to be happening before we have our next meeting so that we know where that's going. So that's about it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I understand that there was significant conversation with regards to the Mille Lacs Band membership. Is there anything that Pine County can do to help clarify or be useful to you in that?
We talked about the fact that we work really closely with them, and there's a lot of benefits with that, and that we have a good relationship, and we were just told that we're the only ones. That there's just a lot of controversy there, and part of that has to do with the lawsuit with Mille Lacs. And so what it came down to was, we said, okay, because that lawsuit, according to what they were saying, is not complete yet, that they've just been told what's going to come down, but it hasn't actually come down from the judge. So with that, we said, okay, we'll put that on hold so that we can move forward, because we have to move forward. And then it was at the very end of that Bowser came back and said, no, I don't think you can not do that. And so one person left pretty angry. I don't know. I don't know what more we can do. I really don't.
Thank you.
One quick question is, now you can offer up to the band and the two other counties, but they don't have to even be involved with it as far as I'm concerned.
Well, they could be part of the tech committee, and the tech committee, they would have no vote.
Okay.
But then the question that Bowser's bringing back is, we think that they have to be voting members. You have to give them the opportunity to be voting members.
I thought if it was under a certain percentage.
Which the opportunity, not that they would have to.
And
I give them the option.
right, and it was stated that they will probably reject it. They probably, I mean, they didn't want to be part of it before. They're probably not going to, but the controversy is, we're not going to ask them, you know. So yeah, it's and from what I understand, Rum River, the Mille Lacs Band is participating in that, and so you know, the Mille Lacs Band may say yes if they're invited. But they figure Chisago and Isanti will say no.
That's the first I've heard about the band, but yeah, because they never entered.
Well, they
Other than
never
here in
had
Montgomery.
land in that watershed, but now because they're the tribal entity and they have that land in the watershed, then that kind of opens that up for them.
Stay tuned. NLX, did they meet?
They did. NLX is kind of interesting. That's another area where they thought that they were going to get something with the legislature, and the legislature stopped and they didn't get anything. So they're really hoping for a reopener on that so that they will get something. They feel that since we all paid into the federal money, and the state has paid so much into the federal money that the federal or the state government is deciding that that would be silly to give all that money to somebody else within the federal area. So they're really pushing to get that. But yes, as of right now, they haven't gotten the funding from the state, and so it's on hold, kind of. But they're going to continue moving forward.
All right. The HRA meeting.
Yeah, I can start it, Dave, if you want to jump in, but yeah, we had our meeting, had a presentation by Jim Philbin, but it was Community Land Trust One Roof Community Housing out of Duluth, which is a nonprofit that's designed to get a low-income family, or I shouldn't say low income, just first home owners into a house for the first time. But so the way their nonprofit works, I'll just give you the general, they own the land, but they let the people get the mortgage on the house. So then it kind of keeps it moving. So it's kind of an interesting concept, and there's a lot to it. You'd probably have to, see their presentation. And I think if HRA or the EDA goes down that road, we'll learn more about it. But it works. And then some people have been living in them for 30 some years, and they just like it. So, I don't know, they're in operational reports, they found that another 50 grand somewhere stashed away in a bank account. So that's added to the fund from the previous management. And then they also, Jolene Fowle introduced the two staff that are going to be working mostly at the two buildings, Stephanie Schuler and Kristen Malik. Other than that, it was just the standard. I don't know if I'm missing something there, but I don't have minutes. I'm just going from memory.
Yeah. And there was a key mix up also. They found that with the new management, they've seen that some keys fit other residents' doors and some keys even.
Oh, really?
Some entry keys for the building even fit the office and got, if people would have known, they could have went in the office and which was a good thing to find out now. Yeah, and then as of finding the more money, I guess my only curiosity is when they found it and what is it tied to? I would assume they could figure out.
Yeah, well, I think they were going through boxes
we're
and
still
they just
working
found a bank statement or something and went and checked and there was money in there.
CDs in the safety deposit box too, they found.
And Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
if I would just add, one clarification we got is that the buildings are debt-free. They were constructed under the 515 program. And there's a section 8 attached to it, but that is not required. So in essence, all of the reserve funds can be used for any legal purpose. And the HRA EDA can decide whether they want to continue the section 8 or not continue the section 8. There's no reason to not continue it, but there was always a murkiness surrounding what laws the properties were built and operated under. So we have great clarity on that now.
It was really interesting because Jolene said whoever set this up originally took advantage of two programs that never worked together before, and she pulled it off. Remember when I was first here that Janice Gustafson presented that used to, and she kind of talked about all that and the milestones they went through.
Yeah, and I think many of the issues that seem confusing to us today resulted when Janice transitioned and it went to a management company that didn't have the history or maybe the understanding of the needs. And so I think, Matt, you highlight that that Jolene really praised how it was done as being very innovative and forward-looking. I certainly think it's something that we should be proud of as a county to have as an asset and an opportunity moving forward.
Yeah.
Good. Assessor recognition. Terry, you want to do that?
That was fun. As a past assessor and being the ones that go and knock on the doors when people are angry and dealing with, come on in, I have guns all over the house and I want to show you, just the weird positions that they're put into. And I could go on and on. This, I think, would have been a horrible year for them because they were going out there and people knew that they were going to be raising their value. And I think that the attitudes that people would have been playing and what we heard, I think it was Karen that said this was the worst year that she's ever dealt with. So it was a pleasure to be able to honor them and just say thank you and recognize them for what they've done and what they deal with. And I think dealing with anybody, we talk about Mark and his crew and Denise and the dispatchers and what they did during the storm, stepping up and above. And we have great employees here. We really do. But it was good to pick a group and to say thank you.
Thanks. TEP meeting. JJ, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I guess, you were there also. So was Dave, so was Reese, but I guess what I gathered from when I first spoke with David about this the landowner wanted to come in and speak and present, and then we thought maybe we'd get something better out of it by actually meeting on the property where everybody could see how the land is healed, and then could point some similarities out that I can speak personally on, because I was in the same similar situation, and it was decided that my property years back that it would have been more of an impact to dig, excavate, and do anything. I was given an option to put land in the conservation easement, which I chose not to. I didn't have as much land to deal with as Mr. Lottie is. And then from what I've seen, it just turned out to be David Demmer just reaffirming what he said all along. There's two options, and that's just the way it is. I think there's more options. Like I said, I explained one of them. There's a conservation easement that was never visited. One thing I feel we got to talk about on the board is just currently how it's set up, as how, Caleb, I've seen Caleb firsthand was put in a position to go against your previous decision. You had implied that maybe I see things a little differently now for what we decided on in the past, and Dave Demmer just quickly looked at you and said, Caleb, you do not go against your previous decision.
Steve Demmer.
Dave Demmer is the rep from Bowser.
Oh, okay.
And I just want to say, I don't think that put you in a good spot. And then to have your subordinate there who then sided with you right away and said, I say the same thing. I just don't think, if you put that in the same department as like the sheriff's department, if you had a sheriff and a deputy that had a voting right in a situation, I think it puts the two subordinates in a bad spot. If their supervisor votes away, I think it would be the same for Mark. I think it would be the same for anyone here that has a subordinate on the same. I just don't see how that is a fair way to make a decision. And seeing it firsthand and standing there and listening to it, how he, I don't know if he was ordering you or just reminding you, but I mean, it puts you in a bad spot, and I don't want to see that. I don't want to see you put in that bad spot again. That's what I took away from that portion of it. For him to say also, there's only two outcomes that was going to happen that day. One, Mr. Lottie was to fix and repair and do all his work that day, which we all know is not possible. That's what we granted him extensions for. The ice just went out not too long ago. And then Dave Demmer also said that was option one. Option two was he's just going to reaffirm the restoration order. And he came ready for that. He had the conservation officer with him. Clearly, I think there's more out there. In the meantime, I have a little bit of correspondence going back and forth with Bowser. Hopefully we can, like I said, talk as a board and see if there's something we can do different. Where I personally feel where you're not in a bad situation, sitting there having to make a decision. And I think it just makes for a hard working relationship for you.
I appreciate that. The only other thing is I would point out is it was an atypical TEP meeting where normally it doesn't quite work that way. And he took a pretty strong position just because of the elevation of pushback on the TEP's decision by county board members. So normally it's more cooperative. So yeah, I can see where he took a pretty firm position the other day, and that was probably frustrating for the landowner. But I guess just feedback that nothing about that meeting was typical.
And Mr. Chair,
yeah,
just a little context. It was back in 2018 when the county last substantively reviewed this and took some action, and that was to take back the authority from the SWCD and bring it back to the county. And then it actually is assigned to Caleb as the land and resources manager. And so there were two resolutions that were adopted back in, I think, of the spring of 2018. And if we wanted to have conversation about, is that the right thing to do? Do we want to consider something else? I think that would be the place to start, is with those resolutions And then also with Bowser and SWCB, because those are the players who need to be at the table. And I'm assuming Reese is at the table because he's part of the county.
I wouldn't disagree with that. It would probably be a good topic for a COW meeting to reaffirm or to recognize or to take a look at what we did in 2018 and say, this is the path we've chosen to go down. This is how the people get appointed to the TEP panel. And so I think one of the reasons the appointment came or how it came, if I remember some of that correctly, was we didn't want elected officials sitting on those TEP panels. And I think that's actually is that a statute or a recommendation?
Statute and rule that it specifies who exactly is a member of the TEP panel.
Yeah. So we've taken ourselves out of, we're not the people that sit, we're not the technical experts. And so maybe for all of us to remember what all the rules are and what all the statutes are would be probably worth a couple hours or time. But thank you for.
And for what it's worth, from my perspective, it's gone remarkably well. Violations are never going to be fun, and no one's ever in. They're hard. They're hard on the landowner, and but we work very hard to work with the folks, and that's why that particular violation has been strung out for 2 years, because we've had a lot of dialogue.
It's interesting at the AMC District 1 meeting, the coordinator from Carlton County has property on Sturgeon Lake. And so we had a little conversation about that stuff, and we might want to include him in some of our conversations also.
And he's also the Windermere Township zoning person.
Yeah.
Dennis is.
He's not the guy on the ground. Is he? Okay, we'll move on to the District 1 spring meeting. I'm gonna just, some of us were there, but as long as I'm talking, I'll keep talking. The one takeaway I had from that was I think it'll be interesting to follow what Cook County is doing with their rental unit ordinances. You know, you think that's a good thing probably to have a bunch of people have their cabins up for rent that bring all this outside stuff into your community, and they got money and they're going to come to town and spend money. What they've found in some locations is people from out of the area snap up all available housing. So it puts even more pressure on the housing shortage you have in your community, because it gobbles up a bunch of those houses that could have been available for people. I never would have even thought about that. But anything, I think we probably have more vacation rentals in Pine County than we probably could imagine that we have.
Like an Airbnb thing, and people use it to help pay their taxes or something.
Yep. And so you get some pushback sometimes from the neighbors who it starts to look more like a resort than a vacation home, as there's a new set of people coming in there every week, and some are good and some are not so good to have living next door to you. So that's kind of what started this whole process. Beside on the North Shore, then it also, you got pushback from the people that own a resort that are going, hey, we're paying commercial taxes And those guys are renting their place and then they're paying nothing.
Aiken's been working on that for about 5 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Commissioners talking.
I don't know. It'll probably come to this board sometime in the next future months or years. We'll be facing the same issue. So start thinking about it. Never too early. Terry, you were there.
Yeah, it will be interesting to follow
Yeah.
that. And you know, the other thing that they talked about is that it's going to affect the workforce, because if you can't buy a house, you can't get a job there, you know, so there's a big part of that. That was interesting it'll be interesting to follow the state's meetings and see how all those questions were answered and what the outcomes were.
You got anything else?
No.
from the meeting?
I'm too hungry to think. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. Yeah, Regional Juvenile Center Advisory Committee.
I have to give that to Terry because I was gone and Terry took it for me.
I know Terry was there. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Real quick, the highlights, Freeborn County is now joined the joint powers. So they joined Stearns and Benton. So I think we're up to 12 counties now, I think. So the trend of non-member bed usage is the highest it's been in the first trimester in the last 25 years. Members have also used 700 additional beds this year compared to April last year. And the facility is at a 5-year high. Thus far in 2022, daily bed usage of 32 beds a day. So I think all of the places that are closing just kind of heightens the rationale on why being a member there is important, because I think even the counties that weren't for a while are recognizing that if they're not part of something, they could be out of luck when they're trying to lodge a kid at some point. So so the membership's strong. The capital reserves balance after they're done with the camera project is just shy of $770,000. Any questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
And then we had a meeting with Commissioner Stauber Friday. Sounds good to have the commissioner. Did I say commissioner?
You said commissioner.
He was the commissioner that day.
Yeah.
He used to be a county commissioner. Now he's congressman. But it's always nice when the congressman stops by, and I know we're on his path, but it's always nice to meet with them. And I sensed his frustration with moving through the federal funding apparatus that we are, as much as we do. And I don't know if he didn't offer any great solution for it, other than we know that when we receive word from a congressman that we're going to be awarded funding in the $5 million range to do some broadband work, we expect that they'd start doing some work fairly soon. But I don't know, when do we have any idea? Will it be a year from now even?
I thought it was something that needed to get started sooner than later, but
Yeah, I don't know, but if you read that resolution you approved earlier,
Yeah,
it's the USDA is yet to promulgate the rules. So
right.
as soon as they do, we will jump on it.
But
And in their defense, they had a full slate of projects they were working on.
Right.
And then Congress passes the first in a decade community projects legislation and says, well, here's some more stuff for you to figure out.
Yeah, and gave them basically no direction. Give this money out, make sure it's spent wisely.
well, and the other thing he talked about is a lot of their people are still working from home, and so the jobs are not getting done the way that they used to get done when they were in office. So, that's taken a big hit too.
Anything else on that meeting?
It was really nice because he believes that local government gets more things done and has, it should be placed more with the local government. So it's nice to have somebody out there that's saying it shouldn't happen on the federal level. It needs to come down and the local level will get it taken care of. It was good. It was a good meeting.
Yeah. Anything else?
I have two
Yep.
things real quick.
I have another too.
Okay, so I did sit in on a mental health meeting yesterday, and one of the things that I got out of it that really hit was we don't teach anything about mental health in our schools anymore. In fact, I don't know if we ever really have, but they're saying that 12-year-olds are where it's really starting right now, dealing with anxiety disorder. And then 7 out of 10 in the juvenile system are there because they have mental health issues. So you look at what's happening with mental health and what the costs are because of that. One of the things that they are asking is that for our next school meeting, if we can get some good mental health classes to help kids understand what they're dealing with, and then maybe ways to work with what they're dealing with, just to help get that mental health under control. I think that would be a huge cost saver down the road. So that was one of, their statistics were most mental health is teens, 75% at 24 years old. It hits young and it hits hard. The other thing that I said, and David, I saw you were there too, and correct me if I'm wrong on the opioid settlement. The AMC had that meeting yesterday. So there's 2 more companies that have come on board that are part of this lawsuit. One of them, I'm not even going to say it right. It's Malin Crod, and they did file bankruptcy, but it looks like they will need to be paying in on that. And then the Minnesota share is $10 to $14 million over 8 years. And then Purdue Pharma is also being looked at. And so there's some more funds that are going to be coming than what we were initially told. And then Johnson & Johnson, they're front loading what they're paying. So they're going to pay the majority of theirs up front, and they'll pay theirs in 11 years instead of 18 years. So that's going to affect the money that's going to be coming down.
And the Pine County is a party to both of those lawsuits against Purdue and Mellencourt. And if I understood the numbers, there will be more money, but it is not so much more money.
Right.
That it's relatively the bulk of what the settlement is now is kind of
Is what it is.
Yep. And we're about $70,000 a year, just shy of that.
So, we were in a chemical coalition meeting, I think is where it was, and Wally St. John was part of that. And he had mentioned, Maurice, correct me if I'm wrong, that the tribes did not get opioid money. So he was asking if we could use some of that money to help with the tribal members. But what they did state is now the tribes have a separate $665 million settlement that's coming. So that was good to know that that's happening there too, because I know that there's a lot of abuse there. So,
and the settlement makes the community health administrator, Sam Lowe, as the chief strategist for the county for spending that money.
Yep, public health.
Matt, did you have something?
Just a quick, we had our kickoff for Kettle River.
Yep.
At Osprey Wild. I went out there and there was like 16 people when I was there. I was there about an hour. My wife and I, they had a nice thing, you put your stickers on the projects and you spent money and allocated dollars, fake dollars.
Yeah.
Just to show it was like a survey. But it was good. The SWCD from Carlton was down, our SWCD was there. And there was another thing about it.
Anybody else have anything? If not, we'll declare